Chapter 969. June Moxie didn't understand this point. From his point of view, Meow Xiao Meow coming out at that time would only cause trouble and increase the danger for herself. There was no practical use at all. Do you think I don't want to come out? But I still owe you one thing. If I don't come out at that time, I'm afraid I won't have the chance anymore. Meow Xiao Meow turned around and looked at the hazy wilderness with a perplexed expression. She sighed softly. Owe me one thing? June Moxie raised his eyebrows. This wasn't an act on June Dashao's part. He really didn't know what Meow Xiao Meow owed him. I've said before that if you win today's competition, I'll let you see my true face. You may treat it as a joke, but I'm serious. Meow Xiao Meow's voice was very soft, but it carried a dreamy feeling. But June Moxie's heart shook when he heard this. If I come out at that time, even if we both die in the end, I'll keep my promise. Before I die, I'll let you see what I look like. Meow Xiao Meow's voice was indifferent, as if she was deliberately suppressing some kind of emotion. In that case, even if no savior comes, even if we both die, I still hope, if there's a next life, you can remember what I look like. If there's a next life, we must not miss it. Meow Xiao Meow's delicate body trembled. She suddenly turned around and looked at June Moxie with tears in her eyes. If there's a next life, we must not miss it. June Moxie suddenly felt a violent tremor in his heart. Looking at Meow Xiao Meow's persistent eyes, he suddenly felt his heart soften little by little. At this moment, he seemed to hear a song in his ears. It was the melody from his previous life. I think I should meet you in a different way. Even if we can't be together in this life, I'm willing to wait, to be with you in the next life. You'll have new feelings for me. I'll silently pray that the heavens are kind to you. Don't let you change your appearance. No matter if you're in a faraway village or a noisy city, I'll be able to find you at a glance. How can I bear such sincere and deep affection? At this moment, June Moxie's heart suddenly became heavy, as if it was filled with lead, so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. June Moxie raised his head towards the sky and slowly spat out a mouthful of suppressed emotions. He only felt that his throat was dry and bitter, and his heart could be said to be extremely complicated. In the face of Meow Xiao Meow's affectionate and persistent gaze, in the face of this woman who had jumped out without any regrets at the most dangerous time to live and die with him, in the face of this true love that she prayed not to miss in her next life even though she knew she was going to die, June Moxie's heart was truly in a whirl. But your veil? I can't lift it. June Moxie turned his head and said bitterly, your true face? I can't see it either. Previously, you still boasted that you're an unrivaled genius, that you're the only one under the heavens. Why are you belittling yourself now? Do you really look down on yourself like this? Great prodigy Mo? Hearing her sweetheart's evasive words, Meow Xiao Meow smiled miserably. In the dark of the night, she was like a sorrowful fairy. The night wind blew gently, fluttering the corners of her skirt. In the night, her dress fluttered in the wind. Meow Xiao Meow lightly moved her feet, as if she was stepping on the moonlight. Step by step she walked closer, until there was almost no distance between her and June Moxie. Their bodies were practically stuck together, and they could feel each other's warm breath. Look at me. Look at me. Meow Xiao Meow's eyes flashed with an indescribable passion. June Moxie was forced to move his body, forcing the distance between them to be a little further. Only then did he raise his head and look at the pair of bright eyes that were inches away from him. You said you can't lift my veil, can't see my true face, but do you know? A trace of bitterness flashed in Meow Xiao Meow's eyes, but you've already lifted the veil in my heart. Apart from you, no one else can see my true face. June Moxie was instantly speechless. He only felt a sudden sourness in his heart. We, the women of Misty Mansion, can only lift our veil for one person in this lifetime. Meow Xiao Meow's tone suddenly became intense, with a kind of reckless determination. Mo Junyi, lift it for me. June Moxie trembled. June Moxie was able to face tens of thousands of enemies without changing his expression. Even when he was only Tian Xian and Shen Xian when he was weak, he could still face the three holy lands calmly and decisively. He could even slaughter tens of thousands of people at once without any hesitation or mercy. But at this moment, facing this pair of clear eyes and this thin veil that seemed as if it could be lifted by a breeze, he was actually at a loss of what to do. For the first time, there was an intention to dodge in his eyes. He didn't dare, he really didn't dare. What was in front of him was a debt of affection and a debt of conscience. June Moxie had come here for the 7-colored holy fruit. It could be said that his intentions were not pure. Even his current appearance was not his true face. If he truly accepted Miao Xiao Miao's true feelings at this moment, it would be no different from cheating his feelings. In June Moxie's entire life, he only sought to have a clear conscience. But at this moment, could he really have a clear conscience? Perhaps one day in the future, because of the 7-colored holy tree, he would still have to go against Misty Mansion. At that time, how would Miao Xiao Miao deal with herself? Towards this kind of feelings, June Moxie knew that he could not accept it. Miao Xiao Miao's stubbornness and daring to love and hate had really exceeded his expectations. Lift it. Miao Xiao Miao bit her lips lightly, her eyes still staring at June Moxie without blinking. She did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Instead, she took another step forward. June Moxie could not help but take a step back. You're not willing to lift it? Miao Xiao Miao's eyes flashed with determination. Fine. Since you're not willing to lift it for me, I'll lift it myself. Mo Junyi, you must remember, after Miao Xiao Miao grew up, you're the first man to see my true face. In this lifetime, I'm determined to follow you. Live as a human, die as a ghost, I'm destined to be yours. June Moxie was tongue-tied, his expression panicked. When he was about to stop her, he saw Miao Xiao Miao's left hand stretching out like lightning. With a swoosh, that layer of veil fluttered down. The tip of the veil was in Miao Xiao Miao's hand. Although Miao Xiao Miao's expression seemed calm, her left hand that was grabbing the veil had already turned white because of the force. June Moxie only felt dizzy, he could not help but close his eyes. Because the person that appeared in front of him was actually such a peerlessly beautiful and exquisite face. In the hazy night, a pair of eyebrows that were like distant mountains, a pair of eyes that were as clear as autumn water, a small nose that was raised, long eyelashes, a white jade complexion, bright red lips, and a sharp little chin. If Mei Shuiyan's beauty was luxurious and graceful, Guan Qinghan's was cold and unattainable, Dugu Xiaoyi's was smart and cute, then Miao Xiao Miao's was exquisite. Exquisite to the point of perfection. Even an artist who pursued perfection wouldn't be able to find any flaw on this face. This face was absolutely perfect. The combination of facial features was just right. Miao Xiao Miao's face suddenly turned red, as if she had suddenly put on a layer of rouge. Her eyes also became hazy. With an inexplicable shyness, her long eyelashes blinked randomly. After a while, she said softly, "Idiot? Have you seen enough? How much longer do you want to see? I didn't see anything." June Moxie hurriedly closed his eyes and shook his head. "I didn't see anything. I really didn't see anything." "But you have seen it. You also know that you have seen it." At this moment, Miao Xiao Miao did not care about a girl's modesty anymore. She stamped her feet shyly and said angrily, "Mo Junyi, don't you dare act shamelessly. Even if you want to act shamelessly, since you have seen me today, I will definitely follow you for the rest of my life. I will be a member of the Mo family when I live, and a ghost of the Mo family when I die." June Moxie groaned in his throat, as if he was about to cry. "I will be beaten to death. I will definitely be beaten to death. I am finished. I am really finished. Who dares?" Miao Xiao Miao shouted with great momentum, "I will beat whoever dares to beat you." After saying that, she smiled shyly and snuck a peek at June Emosie's face. "June, don't worry, grandfather and father dote on me the most. If my heart doesn't belong to anyone, they might marry me off for the sake of the family. But if I'm already, they will most likely agree to the two of us. Furthermore, you're the future pillar of the misty illusory manor. I believe grandfather and father will be happy to see us together." "What? I'm not worried about your grandfather or your father." June Emosie's mouth twitched, and he almost cried. "I'm worried about my mother." The words had just come out of his mouth when he realized that the person he should not be worried about the most was his mother. Dongfeng when Exen was eager for Jun Moxie to marry a few more wives. She would definitely be happy to see this happen, and would even add fuel to the fire. However, the ones he really needed to worry about were Mei Shuiyan and Guan Qinghan. As soon as this thought came into his mind, he immediately thought of a cold as an iceberg and a domineering as a queen. Jun Moxie had a feeling of being caught in bed having an affair. Suddenly, his hair stood on end and he shuddered with fear. "Give me some time, okay?" Jun Moxie sighed and said softly, "Of course." Only now did Miao Xiao Miao feel as if her face was on fire. She lowered her head, not daring to look at Jun Emosia. Lowering her head, her voice became as soft as a mosquito's as she muttered, "Jun, as long as you—" "I will definitely wait for you." Jun Emosia let out a long sigh in his heart. He suddenly felt a sour and bitter pain in his heart. The night wind was intoxicating, blowing gently. The two of them stood face to face, but both lowered their heads and didn't speak. Chapter 970. It seemed like she had only spoken a few sentences, but she felt that it was more tiring than going all out in a battle. She felt weak all over, and even her body began to sway uncontrollably. This time, she completely disregarded her reservations and expressed her feelings in a single breath, even using a forceful way to confess to the other party. Her wish had been fulfilled, and the shy Miao Xiao Miao instantly felt a little embarrassed. Now that the matter had passed, she still felt strange in her heart. Where did I get such courage from just now? Biting her lips, she secretly rolled her eyes and looked at Jun Moxie. Suddenly, she felt a wave of bitterness in her heart. "This idiot, I've already made it so obvious. Why didn't you come and comfort me?" Even if it's just a light hug, thinking of this, she couldn't help but blush. "Papa, what am I thinking? How can I be so shameless?" However, if I were to be held in his arms, what would it feel like? "What are you thinking about?" Miao Xiao Miao mustered her courage and wanted to say something, but the moment she opened her mouth, it turned into this sentence. "I'm thinking, what should I do?" Jun Moxie sighed. "What should I do? Don't worry, you're the legendary free and natural physique, and the seniors in the Misty Mansion all think highly of you. As long as you work hard in your cultivation, your achievements will definitely be extraordinary, and your advancement will definitely be extremely fast. Although you don't have any foundation or connections now, your future development is something that no one will neglect. Even compared to me, your status is actually not low. I really don't know what you're so worried about. Since you have the guts to offend the Zhan family, what has it got to do with me? You don't have to belittle yourself," Miao Xiao Miao consoled. In her heart, she naturally thought that Jun Moxie was worried that her status was too high, and he felt that his current status was perhaps not worthy of her. So she tried her best to console him, to not let him belittle himself and look down on himself. "That's not what I'm thinking about, you don't understand." Jun Moxie mumbled. "Also, I still don't understand why you would make such a decision. Does it really need a reason?" Miao Xiao Miao asked him mischievously. Then, her beautiful eyes flickered and she said thoughtfully, "Ever since I first saw you, you gave me a unique feeling. You're like a country bumpkin, but when facing a young master like Gu Feiyu, you forced him into a disadvantageous position step by step, and even caused him to vomit blood from serious injuries. At that time, Gu Feiyu only needed to lift a finger to kill you, but you still managed to do that. It's really admirable." Jun Moxie touched his nose and smiled bitterly. "You think too highly of Gu Feiyu? Can he kill me with one finger? Also, you think too highly of me. In fact, I could crush him with one finger. How could I not be confident? And the poems that you casually recited, every sentence was so enchanting, letting Miao Xiao know that you are such a knowledgeable person." Miao Xiao Miao raised her eyes, which were filled with sincere admiration and adoration. "Big sister, you overestimated me again." "Those were all plagiarized," Jun Moxie said helplessly in his heart. "Then, you faced the challenges calmly and faced the difficulties head-on. Almost every game, you were able to turn the tables unexpectedly. Moreover, you forced your opponent into a corner and won a great victory. Whether it was chess or music, they were all inexplicably surprising. It turns out that you actually seem to know everything." Do you know how irresistibly attractive all these are to women? Those were actually plagiarized. Why did I have to be in the limelight? Was it really my own fault that I couldn't bear? June Moxie groaned. At that time, I promised you, if you could win in the end, I would let you take off my veil. Actually, at that time, I was still a little uncertain. It took me some time to think. Meow Xiao Meow laughed self-deprecatingly. Until that moment just now, when you were facing an ambush and could die at any moment, I realized that my heart was suddenly in pain and very sad. Meow Xiao Meow smiled faintly. At that time I asked myself, if you were to die, what would I do? Then I heard myself saying in my heart, if you were to die, I don't want to live anymore. So I rushed out. Actually, until now, I don't know why, but I just rushed out. And when you faced an irresistible enemy, you still laughed and scolded angrily. You didn't put the enemy in your eyes at all, and you didn't even care about your own life and death. This kind of carefreeness and open-mindedness made me admire you. June Moxie finally let out a long sigh and thought to himself, what else could it be? It's because I have the confidence to win, silly girl. In the end, it's all because I have a trump card in my hand, and I'm sure I will win. June Moxie was a little speechless. He didn't expect this. What was going on? He had somehow captured the heart of a young girl? Although June Dashao had lived 2 lives and had extraordinary wisdom, he had never understood the heart of a young girl. A young girl's feelings were the most dreamy and unfathomable. A young girl who lived with a man for a few years might not fall in love with him. But with another man, she would fall in love with him without any regrets after meeting him once, and it would never change for the rest of her life. A young girl's heart was the most unfathomable thing in this world. I still feel that our acquaintance is too short. June Moxie deliberated and said, Miss Meow, I advise you to think about it carefully. After all, it's only been a day, and we don't know each other very well. We don't even know each other well, ah? Meow Xiao Meow exclaimed, as if she had just woken up from a dream. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it myself. We've only just met each other today, but in my heart, I feel that we've known each other for 3 lifetimes. At this point, her expression suddenly became a little flustered. Do you think that I'm a casual girl? Her expression was very nervous, and she seemed very concerned. That won't happen. June Moxie sighed and comforted her. That's good, that's good. Meow Xiao Meow heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Thinking back to the previous question, she pouted and said, what does knowing each other for how long? I've known Zhang Yushu and Zhang Qingfeng for a very long time, but so what? Didn't I only see the true colors of these 2 brothers today? June Moxie was completely speechless. Could this be the legendary woman in love? How could she be so blind? In truth, Meow Xiao Meow was also feeling a little apprehensive in her heart. From this Mo Jun Ye's words and actions, she could tell that this youth was definitely someone she could only dream of, someone worthy of entrusting her life to. But this Mo Jun Ye seemed to have a huge flaw, or rather, an advantage. When other people see a beauty, they would either drool or be unable to move. But this legendary free and natural physique possessor was different. Normally, he could still flirt with her, but when it came to the real thing, he would directly ignore her, and even use all sorts of excuses to reject her. Such a person, if one were to hope that he would take the initiative to confess his love one day, it would probably not happen even when the flowers had withered. Could it be that a girl like me really needs to take the initiative? This is so embarrassing. Forget it, such a good man. If I don't let go of my reservations and take the initiative, I don't know when he'll be snatched away by someone else. The faster the hand, the slower the hand, the less. Didn't I take the initiative to remove the veil today? What's the point of taking the initiative? Although Meow Xiao Meow looked gentle and quiet on the outside, she was actually a girl who dared to love and hate. What she liked, she would fight for it with all her might. She would work hard with all her heart. Because this was her lifelong happiness, and no one else could replace it. Towards other matters, Meow Xiao Meow might be very reserved, but when it came to the love of her life, she was exceptionally bold. Because It was also because of the circumstances. The time left for Miao Xiaomiao to choose was really not much. If she still couldn't make up her mind, perhaps tomorrow or the day after, she would become the sacrificial lamb for her family's marriage. Especially now, there were only 5 days left until the opening of the spiritual herbal gardens. If the rainbow holy tree didn't choose her, then the moment she came out, she would have to face the problem of her marriage. There was no need to doubt this. The so-called 100-year opportunity was just her own wishful thinking. It was totally impossible. Therefore, Miao Xiaomiao had no time to drag it on. In fact, if June Moxie had hurriedly agreed to her confession, Miao Xiaomiao might have doubted her own choice. However, the more June Moxie rejected her, the more determined Miao Xiaomiao became. This was a strange mentality. Actually, it was not just Miao Xiaomiao. As long as one was human, they would have the same mentality. The more they were rejected, the more they wanted it. Things that they couldn't obtain were always the best. Now that she had finally said everything that she wanted to say, Miao Xiaomiao was completely at ease. Thinking about her actions just now, which were similar to forcing a marriage, she couldn't help but blush. Just now, she was like a bully forcing a marriage. As she thought about it, a thought suddenly popped up in her mind. Whether you agree or not, I like you. You are destined to be mine. If I say you are, then you are. If you don't, then you are. What can you do? Whether you agree or not, you have to agree. Her mind was in a trance. She didn't know what she was thinking about. She only felt that her whole body was floating in the clouds. She said whatever she thought and unknowingly said what was in her mind. Whether you agree or not, I like you. What can you do? Whether you agree or not, you have to agree. After she said it, she felt like she had just woken up from a dream. She couldn't help but squat on the ground and cover her face with her hands. She was so embarrassed. Oh my God, how could I say such words? It was fine if I thought about it in my heart. How could I say it out unknowingly and even be heard by him? I'm done for. At this moment, June Moxie was completely stunned. Chapter 971. Listening to the beautiful girl speaking like a female hooligan, June Dashao's brain short-circuited. Is this still the gentle and lovely Miao Xiaomiao from before? Who the hell is this person? Isn't this too fierce? For a moment, June Dashao felt that he had become a girl from a good family. In front of him, there was a mountain king waving a machete, unscrupulously manipulating her, announcing that she belonged to him. This world is really strange. June Dashao smiled bitterly and rubbed his nose. He found that ever since he came to the Misty Mansion, he had rubbed his nose a lot. It's getting late. We really should go. June Xie looked at the unconscious man in black with pity. That man's blood had already formed a pool under his body. The injuries he had sustained from entering and exiting his body weren't light. You can really pass out? You actually didn't wake up for such a long time? Even if you moan during this period, I can still get out of this situation. But you actually can't even feel the pain? June Moxie was really helpless. Looking at Miao Xiaomiao's appearance, it seemed that she had forgotten this important witness. If he waited until Miao Xiaomiao took the initiative to remember, perhaps this guy would have already died from excessive blood loss. He secretly flicked his finger, and a strong wind gently sealed the bleeding wound of the black-masked man. If he continued to bleed like this person would definitely die. Go. Where should we go? Miao Xiaomiao was still covering her face and quietly said. After saying that, she jumped up. Oh, it's already so late. If I don't go back now, I'm afraid my family will be worried. Yes, you should go back quickly. June Dashao said hurriedly as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His words were actually coherent, and there was a hint of impatience. Miao Xiaomiao abruptly stood up, and a pair of big eyes stared at June Moxie with dissatisfaction. Her face was actually panting with anger. June Moxie was puzzled, and couldn't help but look at himself following her eyes. You want me to go that much? Then I won't go. Miao Xiaomiao rolled her eyes angrily. I was wrong. June Moxie only felt that his head was about to explode. If you want me to forgive you, you have to answer a question of mine. Miao Xiaomiao was extremely intelligent, and she knew that this was not the time for her to act coquettishly. Did you really not manage to match the first half of the couplet today? Now that I think about it, the more I think it is, the more I feel that it was a trap that you deliberately arranged. Although the couplet could be considered absolute as long as one could find the crux of it, even if the couplet might not be able to match the majesty of the couplet, as long as the craftsmanship was stable, it would not be difficult. The only difficulty is that the time limit is too short, and it is hard to be in a hurry. Thinking about how Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu thought that they were smart and shot themselves in the foot, June Moxie felt like laughing. Miss Miao is really intelligent, and the truth is as you said. That couplet is just a response to the situation, and it is really not an absolute. In fact, it is rather shallow. Even if I can't match it now, I should have already done so after such a long time. Only those two fools from the Zhan family would think that I really can't match it. Those two brothers are truly foolish enough. It was clearly the trap that you set up earlier, but they still fell right into it. Miao Xiaomiao's eyes widened. However, you said that this couplet is shallow to the bones? Aren't you a little too arrogant? That couplet is majestic and full of arrogance. If you just want to match it stably, it might not be difficult, but to match it with that kind of grandeur is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. How can it be easy? As she said that, Miao Xiaomiao recited softly, "Heaven as the chessboard, stars as the chess pieces, who can play?" This couplet is really wonderful, but your second couplet is also absolutely perfect. The earth as the pipa, the road as the strings, who dares to play? Again, as long as you understand the crux of it, it is not difficult to match the first couplet. Besides, there is actually more than one second couplet. June Moxie rubbed his nose again, thinking to himself, I'm going to get rhinitis soon. More than one? Miao Xiaomiao's eyes widened. I thought for a long time, but I still can't think of anything that matches this couplet. Don't tell me you actually managed to match a few? For example, thunder as the war drum, lightning as the flag, who dares to fight? June Moxie smiled and said, this second couplet is the real majesty, looking down on all living things, disdaining them. Thunder as the war drum, lightning as the flag. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Miao Xiaomiao recited softly, her eyes becoming brighter and brighter. Looking at June Moxie, her gaze became more and more tender. June, your talent is really indescribable. June Moxie blushed with shame. This is also plagiarism. To be honest, I really don't have the talent to match it. Oh no, little Beansprout is still over there. I just sealed her acupuncture point. Miao Xiaomiao finally remembered and cried out in alarm. She rushed over and carried little Beansprout over. She removed the invisibility cloak and unsealed little Beansprout's acupuncture point. The little girl opened her eyes and shouted, Miss, it's dangerous, don't go. It was obvious that her divine sense was still at the moment when Miao Xiaomiao jumped out. She opened her big round eyes and looked at June Moxie and Miao Xiaomiao in front of her. She couldn't help but be stunned. After a long time, she shook her little head and said cutely, Miss and young master, why are the two of you still alive? What is going on? Am I dreaming? The two of them laughed at the same time. It's getting late, you should go back early. June Moxie smiled and said, the future is long, is there a need to rush? That's right. The future is indeed long. Miao Xiaomiao's eyes also became gentle. She looked at June Moxie affectionately and said, then, I'm leaving, and June Moxie nodded. Only now did little Beansprout realize that Miao Xiaomiao's veil was already in her hands. She couldn't help but be startled, but then she said with joy, Miss, congratulations on fulfilling your wish. Miao Xiaomiao's face instantly turned red. She lightly pinched little Beansprout's face and pretended to be angry and said coquettishly, what wish fulfilled? What nonsense are you talking about, you little wench? After saying that, she instructed little Beansprout to drag the masked man on the ground and said to June Moxie, June, you still owe me the song of the burial of flowers. I'll go and get it from you tomorrow, don't stand me up. June Moxie smiled bitterly and agreed. He only saw a white shadow flash in front of him, and a white veil like mist fell in front of him. June Moxie subconsciously reached out to catch it. He only heard Meow Xiao Meow's shy voice from afar. "This, you took it off, so it belongs to you now." From afar, he saw Meow Xiao Meow and Little Beansprout's silhouettes had already turned into two small black dots. June Moxie smiled bitterly and thought, "Why was it me who took it off? It was clearly you who took it off yourself." But holding this white veil in his hands, he couldn't help but feel confused. The white veil laid softly in his hands. That soft touch almost made people feel like their souls were being eaten away. The white veil faintly emitted a fresh and feminine fragrance. It was the fragrance of Meow Xiao Meow's body. June Moxie sighed and thought, he really didn't know how to resolve this emotional debt. After muttering to himself for a while, he kept the white veil and activated the yin-yang escape, chasing in the direction that Meow Xiao Meow had left. This place was still in the wilderness, and Meow Xiao Meow and her servant were just two girls. Even though Meow Xiao Meow's cultivation wasn't ordinary, there were too many people here, and there was no lack of people with high cultivation. It was inevitable that accidents would happen, so it was better to be careful. From afar, he saw Meow Xiao Meow and Little Beansprout walking briskly, and he faintly heard the conversation between the master and servant. "Miss, you're really amazing. That young Master Mo Jun Yi seems to have been taken down by you." "What do you mean taken down? You lass, you don't even know how to speak properly." "Miss, how did you do it?" "That young Master Mo is smart, honest, and also very talented. He even has the free and natural physique. His future can be said to be limitless. He's an ideal husband that's hard to come by." Little Beansprout's words almost made the invisible June Dashao stumble. "Heavens, there's actually someone who says I'm smart and honest. Such an encouraging evaluation is really out of line." After a long time, Meow Xiao Meow's voice sounded again. "What I'm interested in isn't his future, but his person. That's right. Young Master Mo is good in everything, except that his appearance is a little too ugly. This is the point that he isn't worthy of Miss, but there's always someone who's not perfect." Little Beansprout's words made June Moxie stumble again. "Nonsense. How is young Master Mo ugly? I think he looks good." Meow Xiao Meow's voice was very anxious. From her voice, it could be guessed that Meow Xiao Meow's face must have turned red. All right. I won't say it, all right? But how are you going to tell old Master about this matter? This doesn't seem easy to say, even if young Master Mo's identity isn't ordinary, but..." Little Beansprout's voice became worried. "I'll take it one step at a time." Following Meow Xiao Meow's sigh, the master and servant floated into a large courtyard. On the golden plaque in front of the door, two words were written grandly: Meow Residence. June Moxie stopped in his tracks, staring blankly at the door of the most influential family in the Misty Mansion. He only felt his heart was heavy, and his mind actually went blank. What should I do? What should I do? If there's a future, then what should I do? What should I do? Standing under the resplendent starry sky, June Dashao's thoughts tumbled, and he found it hard to sort them out. At this moment, he actually didn't know what he should do with himself. This was the first time in both of his lives that he had such chaotic thoughts. In his previous life, he threw money to get drunk and roamed the brothel freely. It could be said that he passed through 10,000 flowers, but not a single leaf touched his body. Although it was full of playfulness, it was only for his needs, and he lacked true feelings. But because of this, he had a lot less worries. As for this life, living in such a feudal society, it was a man's paradise. A man, especially a successful man, having 3 or 4 wives was seen as a matter of course, and even women accepted this concept deep in their bones. Chapter 972. There were many women by June Moxie's side, and all of them were extremely beautiful. First there was Dugu Xiaoyi, and then there was Guan Qinghan. He didn't have any burden on his conscience. Even when he was outside the Tian Fa forest, because of Dugu Xiaoyi's drugging, he obtained Guan Qinghan's virginity. Perhaps he felt sorry for her, but he didn't feel guilty. Today it had become a fact. Because in June Dashao's heart, Guan Qinghan was his woman, and so was Dugu Xiaoyi. As people who loved him, they were going to be together in the future. Some things didn't make a difference whether it was sooner or later. At least he didn't have too much of a burden on his heart. Because he would be responsible for this woman's life, and he had the ability to be responsible for the lives of the women who loved him. In the end, Mei Shuiyan's life was smooth sailing, and success came naturally to her. This was because there were no obstacles at all. In fact, even Han Yanmeng had shown a vague affection for him. His personal servant Kaer had also been deeply in love with him, and it was difficult for her to have any feelings for him. But all of this, June Moxie just let nature take its course. If these women chose to leave in the future because of someone else, perhaps the young master would feel sad for a while, but it was not absolutely unacceptable. He would even give them a generous dowry, just like how he would marry his younger sister, so that they could get married in a grand manner. Of course, if these women chose to stay by his side, June Moxie wouldn't force them out. But entering the misty illusory manor this time, young Master June truly felt conflicted and a sense of defeat. Although the misty illusory manor was different from the three holy lands, and they were clearly enemies with him, they were still a force that schemed against Tian Fa Forest. Both sides could still be considered as half-enemies. But on the way here, there was no doubt that Chao Guofeng and the rest had protected him. Although all of this was built on the premise of a fake identity and a transcendent physique, that feeling was enough to move Jun Moxie himself. For a deceptive purpose of harming others to benefit himself, he had to bear the sincere feelings of the enemy. This made Jun Moxie feel very guilty. Even though he had made up for Chao Guofeng's lost lifespan and true qi, Jun Moxie's guilt didn't reduce much. Chao Guofeng did it sincerely, but he did it intentionally. The difference between them couldn't be calculated by reason. But after coming to the misty illusory manor, the identity that he'd fabricated to disguise himself had instantly become the darling of the entire misty illusory manor. Especially those highly respected seniors. Everyone's expectations of him could be said to be sincere. Although the ultimate goal of these people was the future of the misty illusory manor. But this love and concern had also landed on Jun Moxie's body. Because he was the owner of the legendary free and natural physique. He was the hope of the future of the Misty Mansion. Jun Moxie could totally imagine that if his identity was exposed one day, regardless of whether he had taken away the rainbow holy tree, the result would be the same. These people would definitely suffer unimaginable disappointment and rage. Once he thought of this, Jun Moxie also felt guilty. And then there was the Miao Xiao Miao whom he had just parted with. Although Miao Xiao Miao was the most outstanding descendant of the younger generation of the Miao family, intelligent and witty, with profound Xian cultivation, she was still a young lady who had just experienced her first awakening of love. Just today, she had taken the initiative to open up her heart to him. In the face of a desperate situation, she had stood up to share life and death with him. Even if she were to die, she would die together with him. This kind of affection, how could he bear it? How could he repay it? Just so that if there is a next life, remember my appearance, and don't miss it. This sentence was so powerful and resonating. How could Jun Moxie not be moved? Even if he had a heart of stone, hearing such words, could he really not be moved? The woman of the Misty Mansion only loved one person in her entire life. The moment that layer of veil was removed from Miao Xiao Miao's face, Miao Xiao Miao was already destined to not be able to turn back. This infatuated young lady, she had entrusted her entire life to Jun Moxie. Or rather, she had entrusted it to Mo Junyi. Was this love blind? Not at all. If Mo Junyi was really just a Mo Junyi with free and natural physique, then Miao Xiao Miao's choice. And this deep love would definitely not be in vain, destined not to be in vain. And the final ending would definitely be a blissful one, and would even become a story that would be praised by all. But Mo Junyi was Jun Moxie. If that day came and his identity was exposed and he left without a care, this young lady, would she still be able to live on? Her lover's deceit, the supercilious looks from all around, the censure from her family, and the disappointment and despair in her heart. How could a weak young lady endure all of this? How could she endure it? Jun Moxie could practically foresee that the moment he left, that peerlessly beautiful face of hers would wither away, but could he not leave? This was undoubtedly a huge contradiction, an irreconcilable contradiction. But that day was destined to not be far away. It could even be a few days later. June Moxie suddenly felt at a loss that was hard to resolve. Could it be, for the sake of his family's happiness, he had to create another tragedy? Or perhaps, the only feasible way was to bring Meow Xiao Meow along with him when he leaves. But would she leave with me? And those love and concern from Misty Mansion, what should I do? Could it be that I really have to repay them in such an ungrateful way? Then, would I still be the evil monarch who could repay kindness and enmity with a clear conscience? From today onwards, how could my heart be at ease? Heavy thoughts caused June Moxie's mind to be in a mess. In this state he floated back to the courtyard. Luckily, he was still in the yin-yang escape state, not merging with the mortal world. Otherwise, who knew how many times he would have hit the wall? The moment he entered the house, June Dashao finally woke up. Looking up, he saw his master Chao Guofeng and the other 5 holy emperors waiting for him in the courtyard. Only Bai Qifeng was nowhere to be seen. Chao Guofeng saw that he seemed to be in a daze and hurriedly asked what happened after he left. June Nemosie's heart was filled with vexation, but he decided to shift the blame to the Zhan family. If there was one place in the misty, illusory manner that young Master June did not have a good impression of, it would be the Zhan family. Naturally, he recounted the events of the competition in detail. As for the 6 venerable realm assassins who came after being defended, it was as detailed as it could be. It was even embellished to the point of adding oil and vinegar to the story. The first half of the match was still all right. The young Master June had been forced to participate in the match. But his results were brilliant. So, he had gained a lot of advantages. But Chao Guofeng and the other 5 had flown into a rage when they heard that someone had tried to kill June Nemosia. And when they heard that the 6 assassins all had the cultivation of a venerable, the 6 of them broke out in cold sweat at the same time. They were really too careless. They had originally thought that the free and natural physique was the hope of the entire Misty Mansion, and that everyone was from Misty Mansion and had the same goal. They would definitely not allow any accidents to happen to him. Perhaps there would be some ripples, but there would definitely not be any danger to his life. But none of them had expected that there would be similar undercurrents in Misty Mansion. Perhaps the older generation hoped that this youth with the free and natural physique would grow up safely and become a pillar of support for the Misty Mansion. But there were also some people who did not wish for him to live in this world. After hearing June Moxie's narration of the entire process, Chao Guofeng, Holy Emperor, rejoiced at the fact that his successor had been saved by a benefactor. But at the same time, he was also filled with grief and anger. Although Wang Neng and Li Jie were not his disciples, they were still disciples that he had nurtured with great care for tens of years. Who would have thought that in the face of danger, they would choose to betray June Moxie without any hesitation, betraying the hope of his life? At this moment, Holy Emperor Chao could not help but stomp his feet and curse. If Wang Neng and Li Jie were still alive and were in front of him right now, the enraged Chao Guofeng would definitely tear the 2 of them into pieces without any hesitation. But while the 6 holy emperors all heaved a sigh of relief, they were also wondering who the mysterious expert that saved June Moxie was. With that strange demonic sword that the mysterious expert wielded, he should have been famous long ago. But in the Misty Mansion, they had never heard of such a person. A figure flashed, and Bai Qifeng floated back. From afar, he laughed loudly. So that brat had returned long ago, causing me to make a wasted trip. I practically went around the entire mountain. So it turned out that when Holy Emperor Bai saw that June Moxie had not returned for a long time, and coincidentally, he was the most impatient person, he went out to look for him. Perhaps you guys still don't know, but something big seems to have happened in Old Meow's family. Old Meow's sudden roar of rage has practically shaken the entire misty illusory manor. Bai Qifeng was beaming with joy, a hint of schadenfreude in his voice. I wonder who has offended him this time. But looks like there's going to be a good show to watch. I'm afraid you'll have to act out this show personally, Chao Guofeng said darkly. Only then did Bai Qi Feng realize that his brothers' faces were very ugly. He could not help but ask, what exactly happened? Chao Guofeng let out a sigh and briefly explained the entire matter. Fuck their grandpa. Who dares to do this? Fuck, it must be those bastards from the Zhan family. This daddy will go and find them right now. If this daddy doesn't let them know that this daddy has 3 eyes, this daddy's name is not Bai Qi Feng. When Bai Qi Feng heard this, he instantly jumped up in rage, shouting and cursing nonstop. Chapter 973. Bai Qi Feng glared and hollered. Are we just going to suffer in silence like this? This daddy is not convinced. If there's no movement, who knows, those bastards might still plot against Junyi. Aren't you worried? What are you shouting for? Chao Guofeng also roared, instantly silencing him. Chao Guofeng panted heavily and said, You said it yourself just now. Old Miao's side is currently furious. I believe the reason for his rage is also because of this matter. Junyi was not the only one who was ambushed. His precious granddaughter, Miao Xiao Miao, was also ambushed. I think it would be better for us to go to the Miao family right now. I heard from Junyi that there was a survivor who was brought back by Miao Xiao Miao. I wonder what they have found out from the interrogation. If there's a witness, things will be different. Right, that makes sense. There's no time to lose. Let's set off immediately. Bai Qi Feng's impatient nature kicked in and he pulled Chao Guofeng away. In the blink of an eye, the 2 holy emperors had already disappeared. The other holy emperors instructed Jun Moxie to rest in peace, but none of them left. They directly stayed here. Actually, it couldn't be considered as staying. None of the holy emperors rested. They stayed all over the place and guarded Jun Moxie's room tightly. What if someone came to assassinate him again? The assassination attempt on Mo Junyi this time had truly frightened the Saint Kings. They had basically turned into birds that had been startled by the mere twang of a bow. They didn't dare to have the slightest bit of carelessness. They absolutely had to nip any chance of danger in the bud. Compared to the agitation on Chao Guofeng's side and the rage on the Miao family's side, the Zhan family was also in a complete mess. After Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu arranged for 6 venerable-level assassins to assassinate Mo Junyi, the 2 of them returned home early to avoid arousing suspicion. After being severely reprimanded by their elders, they were ordered to reflect on their mistakes. The 2 of them had ulterior motives in their hearts as they looked at the time from time to time. Most likely, the free and natural physique great prodigy Mo had already become a pile of minced meat, right? The 2 brothers stretched their necks and waited, but there was no news. Seeing that it was getting late, they could not help but be on tenterhooks. Could it be that something unexpected had happened? If it was an accident, the 2 of them would be the first to not believe it. This time, 6 venerable experts had been dispatched. How could there be an accident when dealing with an ant that hadn't even reached the Golden Xian realm? What kind of accident could there be? That was like lifting a mountain to smash a mosquito. It was absolutely a standard case of hitting an egg with a rock. As for why he hadn't returned yet, it could be that those people were carrying out his orders faithfully and were carefully punishing Mo Junyi, putting him in a dilemma of life and death. That Mo Junyi would definitely die. There was no other possibility. But even after waiting until midnight, there was still no news. This caused the 2 of them to feel anxious. They were more confident in their guards. Those guards had always been experienced in handling matters, and they understood the logic of a long delay leading to more problems. Even if they wanted to toy with Mo Junyi for a while, they would not delay for too long. Based on the time, they should have returned by now. Even if 1 or 2 of them met with an accident, it was impossible for all 6 of them to meet with an accident at the same time. Could it be, Big Brother, do you think that there might be an accident? Zhan Yushu paced around uneasily, his brows furrowed and his face unusually dark. It's really not normal. Could it be that something really happened? Zhan Qingfeng had already sensed that something was amiss earlier. It was just that he had kept this thought in his heart and did not say it out loud. If something happened, then it could be a big matter. Zhan Yushu said anxiously. With the high regard that the upper echelons of the Misty Mansion have for Mo Junyi, If someone finds out that the two of us were the ones who planned this matter, then even if the family clan backs us up, we will not be able to bear the consequences. Right now?" Zhan Qingfeng paced around with a gloomy face. Suddenly, 2 rays of cold light shot out from his eyes. "Judging from their speed from here to the mountain, it's only an hour's journey. Right now, it's already been close to 6 hours, and they still haven't returned. Something must have happened. You Shu, we need to prepare for a rainy day." "Prepare for a rainy day?" Zhan Yushu looked at him in confusion. "We'll go look for father now and admit to him that we were the ones who did this. Let him think of a way." Zhan Qingfeng hardened his heart. If this matter succeeds and Mo Junyi dies, the Misty Mansion may pursue the matter, but they may not pay much attention to it. I believe that Lord Father will also be able to help us keep the secret, so we won't be in too much trouble. But if this matter really goes awry and we get caught, we'll be able to make early arrangements. At the very least, we need to be prepared. So between the two of us, one of us must be prepared to stand out and bear the responsibility this time. Zhan Qingfeng looked at Zhan Yushu. "Dream on." Zhan Yushu's entire body began to tremble. Once this matter is exposed, no matter who bears the responsibility, it is destined to be an outcome beyond redemption. "Big brother, don't even think about making me take the blame for this. We are brothers, we will share blessings and bear misfortunes together. Or, are you willing to take care of me and bear this heavy burden?" "Don't even think about it?" "Not necessarily. I'm afraid that when the time comes, it won't be up to you or me. This matter has already gone beyond the scope of our control." Zhan Qingfeng laughed sinisterly. "Once this matter is exposed, the family will definitely not admit that the two of us conspired in this matter. That kind of influence will only worsen. I think most of the time, only one of us will bear the entire responsibility. The conclusion is very simple. That person will either be you or me. And this matter will be decided by the elders of the family. Right now, our fates no longer belong to us. As for me telling you this now, it's just so that you can be prepared in advance." Zhan Yushu lowered his head like a defeated rooster. He was no fool. He could naturally imagine the truth of Zhan Qingfeng's words. In the study of Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu's father, Zhan Changsong, Zhan Changsong's face was taut as he listened to his two sons' words. After a moment, he stumbled and fell onto the chair behind him. He had never imagined that the two sons he had high hopes for would actually cause such a huge disaster. How could Zhan Changsong still have the time to scold his two sons? He immediately sent out the experts of the family to investigate the place that Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu had mentioned. At the same time, he immediately sent someone to inform the current Zhan family patriarch, Zhan Wuyun. In an instant, in the Zhan residence, the low sound of a bell rang out slowly. This was an important signal to summon all the upper echelons of the Zhan family to the secret chamber for a discussion. The moment the bell rang, Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu both jumped in fright. Although the two of them had already thought of this matter as serious as possible, they still hadn't imagined that it had already reached such a serious state. This matter actually required all the upper echelons of the Zhan family to gather for a discussion. When we reach the secret chamber later, say whatever you have on your mind. Do not hide anything from me, and do not exaggerate anything." Zhan Changsong glared at his two sons and let out a long sigh. "As for how far this matter will develop, I don't know either. As for the fate of the two of you, leave it to the heavens." After saying that, Zhan Changsong walked out. It was just that his usually straight back was much more hunched at this moment, and his steps were even more unsteady. That was a sign of helplessness, causing this father to be unable to say a single word. Because he knew that no matter what he said right now, it was all unnecessary. The lives and fates of his two sons were no longer something he could decide. From the start to the end, he didn't even say a single word of reproach. But it made Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu feel the seriousness of this matter. Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu looked at each other, their faces pale. In the secret chamber of the Zhan family, the atmosphere was unprecedentedly heavy. In this secret chamber, There were a total of 50 to 60 people present, sitting on both sides of a large rectangular table. On the opposite side, a thick black cloth hung down, blocking everyone's line of sight. Who knew if there was someone else behind the black cloth? Zhang Wuyun sat at the head of the table. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, and his face was ruddy. But everyone knew that this Zhang Wuyun only looked young. In fact, this Zhang Wuyun was already over 200 years old. The reason why I've gathered everyone here today is because something big has suddenly happened in our Zhang family. Zhang Wuyun said simply with a dark face. Everyone present had a calm expression on their faces. There was not the slightest hint of impatience or curiosity on their faces, fully displaying the calmness of the disciples of the great families. Furthermore, the Zhang family members present here were practically from every industry in the Misty Mansion, and they were all influential figures. With the immense power and influence that these people held in their hands, there were very few things that could be called big matters. Zhang Wuyun did not say much. He only clapped his hands, and someone brought the two brothers, Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu. The two of you, tell me the entire matter in detail. Everyone here was a core member of the Zhang family's direct line of descent. They were all part of the Zhang family in the truest sense. There was no need to worry about secrets being leaked. Zhang Qingfeng had a bitter expression on his face as he recounted how he followed the orders of the family and set up a trap to deal with Mo Junyi. But in the end, the tables were turned and the two of them were humiliated. Then, the two of them were filled with hatred and sent 6 venerables to assassinate Mo Junyi. But there was still no response until now. The secret chamber was completely silent. When the two of them finished recounting the entire matter, the entire secret chamber instantly burst into an uproar. In that case, not only did our Zhang family lose the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, but we also lost a condition that we could not refuse? And there's even a possibility that we've been caught by others? A stout middle-aged man furrowed his brows. Aren't the two of you a little too fucked up with regards to this matter? When has our Zhang family ever lost so much face? It's as if we've lost both our wives and soldiers. That's right, what the hell were you two brats doing? Didn't you do any basic research? Acting so rashly, allowing the other party to break through the trap so easily. Such a good situation has been ruined by you two juniors. A wave of criticism rang out. Dong dong. Chapter 974. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a pale-faced young man dressed in green standing below family head Zhang Wuyun. He was tapping lightly on the table with his slender fingers. His eyes were lowered, occasionally looking up. That dazzling glint in his eyes caused everyone to swallow all the words of blame back into their stomachs. This was an extremely important position, and a youth in his 30s was actually sitting there calmly. No one had any objections. The youth in green said with a dark face. Everyone, please take note. This is not the time for you to criticize them, nor is it a summary of the lessons learned after the incident. Instead, he wanted everyone to brainstorm and think about how to solve this problem. Even if you scold them to death, beat them to death, the incident has already happened. There is no benefit in talking about these useless things. As for their mistakes, the disciplinary hall will deal with them. It's not up to you to comment. The young man's words could be said to be impolite, and his tone was unusually cold, causing people to feel extremely uncomfortable. But no one had any objections. In fact, the moment this voice sounded, everyone shut their mouths. There was no other reason. It was because this person's identity was the most special person in the Zhang family. If the free and natural physique was the hope of the entire Misty Mansion, then this person was the hope and last trump card of the Zhang family. This person was the true number 1 person in the younger generation of the Zhang family. Even his own name was given by him. Zhang Lunhui. This Zhang Lunhui was only in his 30s, but he already had the cultivation of a 4th-level saint. He was just 1 step away from entering the ranks of the Holy Emperor. He could be said to be an unparalleled prodigy. What was even more remarkable was that this person had never taken anyone as his master. But his strange knowledge had caused even the most senior of the Zhang family, the old ancestor, to gasp in admiration. Just a few words from this Jean Lunhui had caused a few of the seniors of the Jean family who had not been able to break through for a long time to break through. The strength and foundation of this Jean Lunhui was evident. Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu, these two biological brothers, were the number 1 and number 2 in the younger generation of the Jean family in name. They often competed with each other to show off their abilities, but they only looked up to this cousin of theirs who was not much older than them. They had no intention of competing at all, because they already knew that they were not on the same level as Jean Lunhui. There was no way to compare them. The difference was too great. The free and natural physique is rumored to be the best physique for Xian cultivators. Since ancient times, only the founder of Xian techniques, the 9-nether first young master, possessed such a miraculous physique. And this Mo Junyi is the second person in the history of the Xian continent to possess the free and natural physique. It was still Jean Lunhui who was speaking. His voice was still as flat as ever, but everyone held their breath as they listened. No one dared to say a word. It's rumored that the greatest advantage of the free and natural physique is that no matter what cultivation technique one cultivates, there will be no bottlenecks. The reason why the free and natural physique was called the free and natural physique was because in his meridians, there were no obstacles similar to the bottlenecks that we met during our cultivation. It was also the most difficult meridians to open up at every cultivation stage. It was all empty and free. There are no impurities or blockages. Those with the legendary free and natural physique can be said to be favored by the heavens. Once their Xian Qi cultivation speed is on the right track, even those who have thousands of years of experience, the so-called reincarnated spirit seeds, are far inferior to them. Especially at higher levels, the effects are even more obvious. The higher the level, the slower the progress for ordinary people. As long as they have enough time, they can definitely become an unimaginably terrifying existence. If that person is intelligent to begin with, their achievements will be even more shocking. And Mo Junyi is such a person. With this person's intelligence, as long as he's given enough time to grow, this person's future may not be inferior to the 9-nether first young master. If I was the person in charge of the misty illusory manor, the entire Jean family would be implicated by the unforgivable mistake that the descendants of the Jean family had committed. Even if blood flows like a river, I must use this to intimidate everyone, so that they will not have any ill intentions towards the free and natural physique. Because this person is the true future pillar of the Misty Mansion. Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu's foreheads were filled with sweat the moment Jean Lunhui said this. Their faces also turned sallow. So the Jean family must not be implicated in this matter. I believe everyone understands what I'm trying to say. Jean Lunhui snorted and looked at Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu with a sharp gaze. The two of you deserve to die. Just when our Jean family has made all the necessary preparations, just waiting for me to fully recover my strength and become the sole ruler of the Misty Mansion, the two of you actually created such a huge mess. If Jun Moxie was here, he would be able to tell from Jean Lunhui's words that this Jean Lunhui must be the reincarnation of some expert spirit seed. Because his words were already very clear. Then how should this matter be resolved? Jean Wuyun was also very respectful when he spoke to Jean Lunhui. The reason why I asked everyone to come is to make preparations in advance. This matter would be pushed entirely onto those 6 people. Regardless of whether they were alive or dead, this responsibility must be borne by them. First, find all the family members of those 6 people as soon as possible. Immediately get the relevant people to create a fake file, saying that these 6 people were abused by the Jean family because their family members made a mistake. The Jean family's rules are strict, so the punishment must be harsher. From then on, they will develop hatred towards the Jean family. Pin down every single one of their family members, and make a unified statement. At the same time, promise benefits to their descendants. When everything calms down, there will naturally be a stable life for them. The process of this matter is very simple, but in actual fact, it is very complicated. Because their family members are likely to be in the various departments of the Jean family. The family members of 6 venerables is not a small number. Therefore, it might require everyone present to take action. Then, everyone's methods would be gathered together and put together perfectly. They had to create a real crime of an evil servant harming his master. And only this crime can completely exonerate the Jean family. This is the only way to resolve this. There will be no repercussions. To do great things, one must be ruthless. This may be a little cruel, but this cruelty can save the Jean family. Jean Lunhui stood up easily, his pale face looking exceptionally demonic under the illumination of the candlelight. Most importantly, do not forget that you only have half a night's time. Everything must be completed before daybreak. If it cannot be completed, then everyone will commit suicide together. Finishing, Jean Lunhui placed his hands behind his back and walked out. He did not even turn back. When he reached the door, he paused for a moment and said, "As for Qing Feng and Yu Shu, arrange for the two of them to suffer the 9 nether soul refinement together. If they cannot endure it and die, then it will be their punishment. If they can endure it, then our Jean family will have 2 more experts with limitless futures. It's decided then." Finishing, his figure disappeared from everyone's sight. Jean Qing Feng and Jean Yu Shu's faces were drained of all color, and their legs began to tremble uncontrollably. They already knew what their fate was going to be: to suffer the 9 nether soul refinement. 9 deaths with no chance of survival. That kind of pain might not even be as satisfying as death. But the fate of these 2 brothers was already decided. Because that was what Jean Lunhui had said. The entire Jean family became busy in the next moment. Everyone was extremely nervous, and they were busy running and running. From the outside, the entire Jean mansion looked the same as usual. However, no one knew that everyone inside was running around with all their might. The Jean family was busy, the Miao family was busy, Chao Guofeng and the rest were also busy. Jun Moxie, the center of everything, became the most leisurely person in this sleepless night. But there was one thing that Jun Dushao had in common with everyone else. He was also sleepless tonight. If someone entered his room to check, they would immediately discover that there was a pillow stuffed in his bed, and he had disappeared without a trace. If the 5 holy emperors who were guarding him discovered this, they would definitely scream that he had seen a ghost. Under the full protection of the 5 of them, he had actually disappeared again. Actually, it was not as serious as seeing a ghost. Right now, Jun Dashao was in the Hongjun Pagoda. The blood of yellow flame shone brightly, flying around Jun Mo Xie's body, occasionally letting out a loud sword cry. Tonight, it was the godly sword, the blood of yellow flame. After Jun Moxie summoned it soundlessly, it didn't take much effort to finish off the 6 enemies. And after drinking the blood of the experts, the killing intent of the blood of yellow flame became sharper and sharper. Under Jun Moxie's constant tempering, this sword's spirituality became stronger and stronger, almost possessing its own consciousness. If it was in the past, after drinking the blood of humans, it would absorb all the nutrients. It wouldn't be like today, releasing all its evil energy. But now, the blood of yellow flame had already taken form. What it lacked now was an endless supply of fresh blood, and it could grow into a flying sword in the truest sense of the word. A sword that traveled 1,000 miles, traversing the world. It would no longer be limited to being controlled. Chapter 975. Although the blood of yellow flame was still a distance away from fully maturing, Jun Moxie was still very satisfied with its growth rate. After all, Jun Moxie wouldn't go on a killing spree when there was no need to. It was just to satisfy the blood of yellow flame's needs. This was because a divine sword that was born from excessive slaughter would only give rise to an adverse effect that was difficult to control. Once the blood of yellow flame transformed into a blood-sucking evil weapon, it would lose its original purpose. Only when it had to kill would it be unsheathed. That way, unsheathing the sword would be the user's intention and not the sword's. This was a fundamental difference. A sword that was nurtured this way would truly belong to the user. It would never be in danger of losing control. Yellow flame, do you know the crux of my conflict? Jun Moxie waved his hand, and the blood of yellow flame stopped in his hand. Facing the shining sword, he said in a low voice. The blood of yellow flame let out a low hum, as if replying. Jun Moxie could feel the sword's depression, and he couldn't help but laugh. Right now, only you can understand my feelings. It's really hard for me to be as free and unrestrained as before. With a swoosh, the sword shone brightly, and a cold, killing intent appeared. Don't tell me you want to kill everyone here? Jun Moxie laughed bitterly. How can there be such a thing that can be resolved so easily? The hardest part is the feelings, not the strength of the enemy. If everyone in the Misty Mansion was my enemy, then I wouldn't be so troubled. The blood of yellow flame flew up lazily, and with a clang, burrowed back into its scabbard. Evidently, it was very impatient with Jun Moxie's ridicule, and it didn't understand, so it went to sleep. Fuck. Jun Moxie laughed. Raising a sword to raise a sword, and it actually grew a temper. While his thoughts were in a mess, Jun Moxie wandered over to the spirit vein to check on the Qian Sun Serpent Queen's condition. He looked at the sleeping green-clothed beauty in front of him, quietly sleeping. Her face was still that peaceful and serene expression when she had suddenly pounced in front of him to block that fatal blow for him. There was even a faint trace of satisfaction on her face. Jun Moxie suddenly felt an indescribable throbbing in his heart. Ever since the Snake King had been lying there, he had been coming in a few times a day to talk to her, or to transfer spiritual energy to her, or to massage her body to ensure that her muscles wouldn't atrophy and her bones wouldn't stiffen. Sometimes, 3 times a day, he squeezed the spiritual fruit into juice and fed it to her so that her life wouldn't be extinguished. As time went by, Jun Moxie began to understand why the Snake King would throw himself at him. It was precisely because of this understanding that his heart ached more and more, because of love. And it was a desperate love, a love destined to be fruitless. Since I can't have you, then I might as well die for you. Because I'm the lover of her most respected elder sister, Mei Xuan. Is it really worth it? You just lie there without saying a word, but you don't know how the person who risked her life to survive because of you feels. Jun Moxie murmured, "Wake up quickly, Qian Sun. I won't let you be sad anymore. You can have it, you can have it." The corners of the Qian Sun Serpent Queen's mouth were still showing a trace of satisfaction and gentleness. Sigh. Jun Moxie sighed sadly. "I will definitely wake you up soon. I will also take you to travel all the famous mountains and rivers, to see all the beautiful scenery in the world. No matter what method I use, I will make you wake up. Don't worry, Qian Sun. Your love will not be in despair. You can have everything you want." Jun Moxie sighed and walked to the other side as he looked longingly at the beautiful face of that woman. On the other side of the heaven and earth spirit vein was a pool that he had dug, only half a meter deep, specifically for cultivating exquisite lotus. He dug deep, but Jun Moxie was afraid of exposing the most precious golden jade fluid, so he only dug half a meter deep. Although the heaven and earth spirit vein was not as wide as the pool in the Heaven Saint Palace, it was quite long, at least a few 100 feet long, and he believed that it would not be a problem to plant as many exquisite lotuses as he liked. Above the artificial pool, there was a thick layer of mist. That was not ordinary mist, but the purest spiritual qi in the world. As for the clear water in the pool, it was the purest spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Even if the Heaven Saint Palace and the misty illusory manor joined hands and cooperated with all their might, they would still not be able to take out this pool. Right in the middle of the water, there were 2 transparent lotus leaves floating quietly, and below the water, there were 2 lotus leaves that had just revealed their tips, waiting to bloom on the water. Each lotus leaf floating on the water was almost the size of a fist, and from the thickness of the leaves, it seemed that they had not fully bloomed yet, and there was still a lot of room for them to grow. One had to know that in the Heaven Saint Palace, the largest lotus leaf of the exquisite lotus was only the size of a finger, but Jun Dashao's lotus leaf had already grown to the size of a fist, and there was still a lot of room for it to grow. If Qiao Ying, who was in charge of cultivating the exquisite lotus, saw this, she would definitely be overjoyed. As for the lotus root lying in the midst of the shattered spirit vein stones, it had already grown to the thickness of a middle finger. It was almost 4 times bigger than its original peanut-sized size. Looking at it, June Moxie felt a little satisfied, and he muttered to himself, "Xiao Ing, if you see that it grows 10 times faster in this young master's hands than in your hands, I believe that you would rather devote your life to me." In the pool, there was a small transparent lotus leaf floating about every meter, and these were the real ones that were only the size of a finger. No matter how he counted, there were exactly 20 of them, neither too many nor too few. These were naturally the 20 seeds of the exquisite lotus that June Moxie had asked for from Xiao Ying. With the power of the Hongjun Pagoda, all 20 seeds had actually grown to life. Within the water formed from spiritual qi, there was a vigorous life force. Perhaps it should be said that the seeds of the exquisite lotus were extremely precious in the eyes of the people of the 3 holy lands. But in the Hongjun Pagoda, they were only slightly more precious seeds. If they could be saved, then so be it. It was not a rare thing. Not being able to survive was a rare thing. At this moment, June Moxie was admiring the scene with his hands behind his back, as if he was an old farmer watching his crops grow. Inexplicably, an idea suddenly flashed across June Moxie's mind. Since I have the idea of using the 5 elements qi to nurture the rainbow holy tree, why can't I do the same to the exquisite lotus? As soon as he thought of this, June Moxie walked to the exquisite lotus at the very end. Slowly, he reached out with one hand and gently pulled on the lotus leaf. Then he secretly activated the power of wood that he hadn't used in a long time. A green light suddenly rose from his body, slowly turning into a huge green circle of light. Within the big circle, there were many smaller circles. Circle after circle of green light came out from his body, and before the biggest circle had the time to completely dissipate, new smaller circles of green light had already appeared from his body. Then, these circles of green light slowly fused into the small body of the exquisite lotus beside his hand. The entire body of the exquisite lotus suddenly began to tremble slightly on the surface of the water. The lotus leaf that was originally the size of a thumb began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. It slowly stretched and expanded. Gradually, it grew to the size of a palm, 2 palms. Not only the lotus leaves, but the roots also slowly became thicker and stronger. They were weak before, but now they stood upright. Lotus stalks covered in fine thorns kept growing out, turning from sharp lotuses into expanding lotus leaves. In front of June Mosie's eyes, an exceptionally thick and sturdy lotus stalk suddenly appeared. Then a pink flower bud slowly swelled up, and it slowly bloomed. The entire space was filled with a fragrant aroma. The lotus flower instantly bloomed, but in the next moment, it slowly withered and turned into a lotus seed head. The color of the seed head also gradually deepened, and the lotus roots at the bottom of the water also gradually grew longer and thicker. In the end, the area within a 3 qi radius was filled with lotus leaves, and the lotus roots under the water had also become as thick as a child's arm and as big as an adult's palm. This kind of lotus root was actually 70 to 80 times bigger than the lotus roots that Xiao Ying had painstakingly cultivated in the Heaven Saint Palace. June Moxie looked at the lotus roots in surprise, and couldn't help but dance with joy. So everything was actually so easy. Following that, he felt that something was wrong. Why were all these lotus leaves floating in the air? Where's the water? Only then did June Moxie realize that the pond that was filled to the brim with pure spiritual qi was now completely empty. Only the dried bottom of the pond was left. To grow such a small exquisite lotus, it actually took so much energy to do so. June Mosie was genuinely startled by this. So it was actually such a waste of resources to grow this thing. Before he had the time to be shocked, June Moxie hurriedly used another ability of the power of the 5 elements, power of water. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth, listen to my command, all turn into water here. June Moxie stretched out his left hand and activated the power of water with all his might. A ball of dense blue light suddenly emitted from June Moxie's body. If these treasures dried up and died because of the lack of water, June Dashao really wouldn't even have a place to cry. Within the Hongjun Pagoda, the dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth suddenly formed a whirlpool above June Moxie's head. It became thicker and thicker, and its color became darker and darker. Finally, a series of splashing sounds rang out, and a clear stream of water flowed down from the sky like a small waterfall. It didn't take long for the entire pond to be filled. Chapter 976. As expected, another patch of green light appeared and intertwined with the blue light. In an instant, the entire space seemed to be filled with 7 different colors. The Hongjun Pagoda at this moment was as mesmerizing as a fairyland. And in this beautiful scenery, the second stalk of exquisite lotus was also growing at an unimaginable speed, and the beautiful water continued to flow down from the sky. All of this formed a perfect cycle. The third stalk, the fourth stalk, Jun Moxie seemed to be working tirelessly at high speed. Ever since he had completely absorbed the essence of the 5 elements left behind by the 9 Nether First Young Master at the peak of the snowy mountain, the power of the 5 elements in his body had long reached a saturated state. But at this moment, he didn't feel the slightest lack of power even after using it continuously, until the 13th stalk, Jun Moxie suddenly felt his body lighten. A strange force was acting on his body, and he was suddenly transported from the Hongjun Pagoda to his room in the outside world. What is going on? Jun Dashao was a little puzzled. At this moment, he was still using the power of water in one hand and the power of wood in the other. Although he had quickly come to his senses and stopped immediately, the 2 colors of light still spread out in such a short period of time. It was an extremely beautiful flash in the night sky. In the cloudless night sky above the courtyard, it suddenly started raining. Almost at the same time, the flowers and trees in Chao Guifeng's courtyard suddenly sprang up with a whoosh, as if they had turned into spirits. A small stalk of grass actually grew into a small tree in an instant. As for the roots that instantly spread out, they even covered the entire courtyard with a swoosh. The originally hard ground was still covered with large pieces of green stones in some places. But now, the originally smooth green stone ground was actually tilted and bulging, as if it was being pushed up by the small grass. The entire courtyard had actually turned into a primordial forest in a short period of time. This sudden change of events caused even the initiator, Jun Moxie, to be dumbfounded, not to mention the others. A Saint King was currently meditating among the flowers in his courtyard. Just when he was in the perfect state of mind, he was suddenly drenched by the rain. Moreover, he was surrounded by the dense grass. Some of the grass had even grown too quickly and stabbed into his nostrils, causing his chrysanthemum to tighten. This shock was no small matter. He leaped up and unsheathed his sword in midair. He roared angrily, "Which scoundrel dares to use such a despicable method to sneak and attack? If you have the guts, show yourself and fight with me." After shouting, he realized the strange phenomenon in the courtyard. He was so shocked that he couldn't even breathe, and fell from the sky with a thud. His buttocks landed firmly on the ground. He felt dizzy from the fall, but he didn't feel any pain. His eyes were still wide open as he shouted, What's going on? How? The 4 other Saint Kings naturally believed that an enemy had come as well. They immediately smashed through the window as if they were facing a great foe. They wielded their swords, but they were all stunned when they saw this strange phenomenon. After being stunned for a while, one of them leaped into the air with a schwa sound and looked around. Then he landed back down with a head full of fog. He said in a daze, "That's right. This is Big Brother Chao's courtyard. How did it become so desolate in the blink of an eye? It's just like the Tianfa forest. Could it be that you and I have fallen into the enemy's trap? It's only a moment, but a few years, or even decades, have actually passed?" Another holy emperor suddenly thought, "That's right. Let's see if that brat is still here." With a boom, the 4 walls and one of the windows of Jun Moxie's room were blasted open. 5 people appeared in the room at the same time. Jun Moxie seemed to be startled. His head popped out from under the blanket in a daze. He said in a very frightened manner, What's going on? What's going on?" Nothing." One of the holy emperor was very embarrassed. "Junyi, what time is it now? Which year, which month, and which day is it exactly?" Jun Moxie almost fainted. After he gave his answer, the 5 of them revealed a puzzled expression. Then, they all walked out of the room while mumbling to themselves, Junyi, why don't you sleep in another room? This room is already ruined, one of the holy emperors said in embarrassment. Jun Moxie was speechless. The room was filled with wind from all directions, so it was naturally ruined. This young master is also puzzled. Why did I suddenly come out from the Hongjun Pagoda? I don't seem to have thought of coming out. He naturally did not know that this brat had used the Hongjun Pagoda's spiritual chi to condense into water at such a perverted speed that even the number one spiritual treasure in the world felt his heart ache. This brat really doesn't know the value of rice and firewood. This is the purest spiritual chi of heaven and earth, not the messy spiritual chi of the outside world. It's fine if you're planting good things, but you're using this spiritual chi water to create some rubbish. What kind of reasoning is this? Although I have plenty of it, but to be squandered like this, I still feel my heart ache. You should just scram. And so, in a fit of anger, Jun Dashao was chased out from the inside. Not to mention the few holy emperors, even Jun Dashao himself was not much better off. In a daze, he accepted the reality in front of him. Jun Dashao was naturally not a stupid person. After pondering for a while, he guessed that it was because he had used the spiritual chi water in the Hongjun Pagoda to create the exquisite lotus without restraint, which had angered the stingy old master pagoda. Moreover, the quantity of exquisite jade lotus that he produced in one go was indeed a little too much. Not to mention that it was enough to satisfy the needs of his family, it was so abundant that he could directly stir-fry and eat it. Moreover, it was the kind that could be eaten for a few meals. That bastard is the stingy one? If you really used my spiritual chi to create high-grade items, this old master would have approved of it. But you actually used such a precious spiritual chi water to water those rubbish. Anyone would be angry, and you still dare to say that this old master is stingy? Why don't you say that you don't know what's good for you? The Hongjun Pagoda cursed silently. Looks like this fellow also has a bottom line. Jun Dashao smacked his lips and raised his middle finger speechlessly. Then he hurriedly put it away. Looking down on the Hongjun Pagoda? How despicable was that? That fellow was currently in his body. If he wanted to raise his middle finger, he would have to point it at himself first. Jun Dashao did not have the strange habit of self-abuse, however. He could not enter the Hongjun Pagoda for the time being. His ears were filled with the whispers of the 5 holy emperors in the courtyard. Obviously, these few big shots could not understand what had happened tonight. It was not that they were inexperienced, but this matter was simply too bizarre. Any normal person would not be able to understand it. How did a nice and elegant courtyard suddenly turn into a forest? This was especially true for the 7th brother, who had been meditating in the courtyard. He was recounting the terrifying scene he had just encountered, and his face was filled with anxiety and fear. You guys don't know this, but I was meditating and cultivating at the critical moment of the 3 flowers gathering and the 5 chis collecting in one's prominence. Suddenly, a torrential downpour came crashing down with a whoosh. My whole body was instantly drenched. This old man was so shocked that he almost went berserk. Immediately after that, just as I was gathering my scattered true energy to suppress the rampaging profound energy, a small blade of grass suddenly grew, and with a schwatch sound, it burrowed into my nostrils. What's even more ridiculous was that under my butt, those bamboo shoots that Boss Chow planted, this old man suffered a lot. With a schwa sound, burrowed. It's not too thick, not too thin, not too cold, it's really killing this old man. All the holy emperors laughed together, laughing so hard that they almost fell over. Everyone knew that if they weren't brothers, they wouldn't have said such an embarrassing thing. Even Jun Dashao, who was in the room, could not help but laugh when he heard it. No wonder this old man was so flustered and exasperated. It turned out that his chrysanthemum had been pierced by a bamboo shoot. That was a little too unlucky. That old man's face was full of resentment. You guys are still laughing? Damn it, if it wasn't for this old man jumping up quickly, you guys might have seen bamboo coming out of my mouth by now. 7th Emperor, how do you feel? Don't you feel great? 4th Emperor laughed the most exaggeratedly. His eyebrows and beard were trembling. You haven't been looking for a wife yet. Now, you've lost your virginity to a bamboo shoot, The 4 holy emperors burst into laughter together, tears flowing down their cheeks. Then, the 4 of them instantly fell silent. Apparently, they began to think about the reason after laughing. The accident happened so suddenly that even the strong holy emperor did not notice it. When the accident happened, he was almost hit. If the enemy used this as an opportunity to launch a sneak attack, the consequences could be imagined. However, after spending so much effort, they still found nothing. Junmoxi looked at the 4 big holes in his original room and sighed in his heart. This misty mansion was really of good quality. It was already like this, but it still did not collapse. He definitely could not sleep, so he put on his clothes and leaned against the door frame. He looked at the 5 old men in the courtyard, each of them tilting their heads and frowning as they pondered, after a long time, "Look, what is this?" 5th emperor seemed to have found something rare. He was holding a black seed in his hand and standing in front of a plant. The beard on his chin trembled. "Brothers, a miracle has indeed taken place here. Look at this scarlet jade ginseng. Isn't it the one that Big Brother transplanted here 10 years ago? At that time, it was only 20 years old. Look, it has actually bloomed, and even the seed has fallen to the ground. What does this prove?" Chapter 977. Scarlet jade ginseng was a variant of ginseng. It was extremely rare and required 100 years to bloom and bear fruit. Otherwise, it could not be used as medicine. But because it required 100 years to grow, it was an excellent medicine for strengthening one's foundation and increasing one's Xian energy. Chao Guofeng transplanted these into his courtyard because he had nothing better to do. After all, the Holy Emperor's lifespan was long, so there was always a time to harvest them, but he didn't pay much attention to it. After all, it was only 10 years old, and it would take at least 70 or 80 years for it to be useful. But who would have thought that this ginseng, in the blink of an eye, had actually crossed over 80 years of time? Directly matured? When they realized this, the 5 of them were petrified. Quickly dig it out. Is it really mature? The 3rd brother was so excited that his eyes were shining. In the eyes of these people, the scarlet jade ginseng was certainly not something too precious. But a mature scarlet jade ginseng was still quite rare. If it was really mature, it would be a great bargain. The 7th brother was the first to dig. He carefully and slowly turned over the soil at the side. Even though he was an expert of the Holy Emperor, he was still very careful when digging this scarlet jade ginseng. Because this scarlet jade ginseng had another special characteristic. During the digging process, if the ginseng was damaged, even if it was just one of its roots, all the spiritual energy would disappear in an instant. This was also the main reason why the scarlet jade ginseng was so valued despite its short growth period. Not long after, the scarlet jade ginseng was finally completely dug out. At this moment, there was a deep hole in the ground. Then, they carefully peeled off the remaining soil on the ginseng, revealing the bright red, almost transparent appearance of the ginseng. The 5 holy emperors were all stunned at the same time. This was actually real. This was not only a completely mature scarlet jade ginseng. Moreover, it was definitely the highest quality scarlet jade ginseng. Immersed in surprise, the 5 brothers immediately began a more detailed search. Not long after, look at this green spirit, it's actually mature enough. There's a purple Ganoderma here, it's actually mature enough. The 5 of them immediately turned this place into a treasure hunting paradise. From time to time, cries of surprise could be heard. However, no matter how big a courtyard was, how big could it be? Moreover, Holy Emperor Chao himself was not a herbalist, so the amount he could plant was rather limited. The 5 of them quickly finished searching the entire place. Looking at the messy ground, the 5 holy emperors were all smacking their lips in regret. Naturally, they would not be worried about the miserable condition of the courtyard. With their status, even if they destroyed 10 or 100 courtyards, there would naturally be people who would clean up the aftermath. At the latest, their residences would be repaired to perfection. What they truly regretted was, if I had known this would happen, I would have planted all the elixirs in this courtyard. God knows how many years it would take for such a miracle to appear. Such a miraculous phenomenon actually nourished those weeds and bamboo shoots. It's such a waste, it's simply a reckless waste of resources. The 5 of them sighed and decided to chop down all the bamboo shoots that were not pleasing to the eye, preparing to make soup. A perfectly good courtyard had actually turned into a small bamboo forest. Even the originally empty surroundings of the houses were now filled with beautiful and graceful plants. In many of the houses, on the flat ground, many bamboo shoots had actually sprouted out, pushing over the stone tiles and stubbornly sticking out. They had naturally investigated the place carefully. Other than the courtyard that had the commotion just now, there were no signs of any changes in the other courtyards. Looks like the miracle just now only happened in this courtyard, so it's the heavens' blessing. Old Seventh was on the verge of tears. Rubbing his butt, he did not feel so embarrassed anymore. After all, in this world, who could be touched by a miracle? This old man is the first in the world to do so. This can totally be recorded in the history books. Thinking like this, Old Seventh directly felt that his butt was precious and glorious. When it was close to dawn, Chao Guofeng and Bai Chi Feng finally rushed back, exhausted. The moment they entered the door, the 2 of them were stunned for a moment before turning around to leave, thinking that they had entered the wrong door. Bai Chi Feng grumbled. Every day they say that I'm muddle-headed, but look at you, boss, you can't even find your own house. The 2 of them really retreated quite a distance, looking around for a while before finally stepping into the door in confusion. Looking at the courtyard full of weeds and green bamboo, and the tens of layers of vines on the walls, Chao Guofeng was completely stunned. Looking at the courtyard, there were actually holes here and there. Jun Moxie's room had also become a cool and breezy place. Holy Emperor Chao's eyes were wide open, like a white goose that had its throat strangled. He stuttered for a while before finally roaring, "This? What is going on?" Anyone would be shocked by this scene. Luckily, the first thing that entered their eyes were the plants. If they noticed the holes in the ground and the damaged house, Holy Emperor Chao would definitely suspect that something had happened to Jun Dashao again. Hearing that the 2 of them had returned, the 5 holy emperors naturally ran out of their rooms and surrounded the 2 of them, pointing and gesticulating wildly. The 5 of them fought to be the first to speak, but it made Chao Guofeng and Bai Chi Feng's heads spin. After a long time, Chao Guofeng and Bai Chi Feng finally managed to sort out their thoughts and understand that an unimaginable miracle had happened in this courtyard last night. I'm not in the mood to care about your miracle right now. Where's that child Junyi? How is he? Has he calmed down yet? Bai Chi Feng was obviously not interested in the so-called miracle. He was only concerned about that precious treasure that he had snatched back with so much difficulty. He had just faced an assassination attempt yesterday, so his mood was definitely not good. He's fine. The 5 of them hurriedly replied. Hearing that he was fine, Bai Chi Feng and Bai Chi Feng finally relaxed. Looking at the mess on the ground, then at the various spirit herbs that the 5 brothers were holding in their hands like they were presenting treasures, there were actually at least a dozen of them, and every one of them could be considered as extremely precious treasures. I say, boss, this matter is really strange. Bai Chi Feng rubbed his chin, revealing a thoughtful expression. You say, that miracle, it didn't come earlier or later, but it just had to come the moment Junyi moved in? Bus, this disciple of ours, maybe he really is a god farting. What do you mean? Everyone asked. Extraordinary. Bai Chi Feng shook his head proudly. This was a saying that he had learned from Jun Moxie a few days ago. Now that he had learned it and applied it so quickly, it was indeed extraordinary. Everyone was enlightened. Although Bai Chi Feng's words were a little ridiculous, it was an indisputable fact. Chao Guofeng had already lived in this courtyard for hundreds of years. Not to mention a miracle, even some relatively strange things had never happened before, but today's matter clearly could not be explained with common sense. In an instant, the 7 holy emperors were even more certain that this free and natural physique Mo Junyi would definitely be a big character in the future. Since ancient times, whenever a big character descended into the world, there would definitely be a strange phenomenon accompanying it. Looks like this time was a reminder from the heavens, or perhaps it was a reminder from the heavens that nothing must happen to this child. Almost instantly, everyone's gazes changed. Inside the misty mansion, after the previous night, it had become unprecedentedly chaotic. The free and natural physique Mo Junyi had met with an assassination attempt at the mountain in front of the misty mansion, narrowly escaping with his life. And the culprits were the 6 bodyguards of the Zhan family who had lost to Mo Junyi in the bet earlier. This matter naturally attracted everyone's attention. And the second matter was that the free and natural physique Mo Junyi had also met with a miraculous miracle the night he was assassinated in the courtyard he was staying in. All the plants, after crossing more than 100 years of time in a single night, had all matured. These 2 matters had caused the entire misty mansion to shake. Early the next morning, Manor Lord Miao Jingyun issued an order for the 8 great families of the misty mansion to gather in the misty mansion's main hall. At the same time, the Holy Emperor, Chao Guofeng, was also invited. This time, the Zhan family will definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Those bastards from the Zhan family, this old man has long found them an eyesore. Bai Qifeng sat in Chao Guofeng's little courtyard, his expression very happy, no different from when he was in his own home. He had even moved his bedding over, as if he was a dove occupying a magpie's nest, yet he had no qualms about it. And Holy Emperor Bai's tone had also become much more restrained. His old catchphrase, "this old man," was almost non-existent now. After all, he had a precious disciple by his side. If he taught this young man the wrong way, that wouldn't be good in truth. This was also the condition that Chao Guofeng had set for him to stay here. If he did not comply, he would immediately scram. For the sake of being able to get closer to his precious disciple, Holy Emperor Bai could only comply. A stone table was placed in the middle of the courtyard. On it were all sorts of spirit fruits produced in the misty mansion. The 6 Holy Emperor Bai and Jun Moxie sat around it, eating breakfast. The bamboo leaves were fluttering in the wind, and it was a beautiful scene. I don't think so. Jun Moxie smiled faintly. Although it was confirmed that the Zhan family's guards were the ones who carried out the assassination last night, there were no direct disciples of the Zhan family present. It was this absence that allowed the Zhan family to make a lot of moves. With their foundations this time, they will not suffer too much. At most, they will be punished and ordered to keep a closer eye on their family members. Then this matter will be left unsettled. Oh? Will it really be like this? Bai Qifeng looked at Jun Dashao with an interested gaze. You've really hidden your abilities well. In that case, the Zhan family can only be convicted if we catch Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu last night? Chapter 978. Today's 4th update. Finally completed. I didn't expect to be able to sleep early today. Bai Qifeng and the rest of the holy emperors may have high Xianqi cultivation, but they would forever be lone wolves. Although this situation ensured that their cultivation would increase very quickly, it also meant that they would never understand the power struggle between the large families. That was a form of politics. The Misty Mansion was actually a very different country. Once politics was involved, then unless they were charged with treason, it was impossible to completely wipe out a family like the Zhan family that had lasted for close to 10,000 years. In fact, even the owner of the Misty Mansion might not be willing to let the Zhan family disappear just like that. Because if one party suddenly disappeared, it would definitely break the balance of power that had been maintained for thousands of years. Then, the Misty Mansion would need a very long time to recover. In fact, it was not impossible for there to be a transfer of power because of this, but these were all things that only the upper echelons of the ruling class would consider. Compared to Bai Qifeng and the rest of the holy emperors, these things were more profound. It was understandable that they did not understand. After breakfast, it was almost late in the morning when Saint Emperor Chao Guofeng walked in with a dark expression on his face. With one look, it was obvious that this matter did not achieve the good results that he had originally hoped for, those old bastards from the Zhan family. This is really infuriating, despicable, shameless, and filthy to the extreme. He actually pushed all the responsibility onto those guards who carried out the assassination, saying that those guards refused to comply with the Zhan family's rules, and that their family members had also been severely punished by the Jean family because of their mistakes. This time, they acted on their own out of dissatisfaction and attempted to kill Junyi, framing the Jean family to achieve their goal of revenge. What a clean explanation. How did they come up with it? According to their logic, the Jean family had turned into an innocent family. Even the victim. Who would believe such words? Chao Guofeng blew his beard until it was straight. Confusing right and wrong, inverting black and white, calling a deer a horse, this family can actually reach such a level of shamelessness. This old man has really broadened my horizons. No wonder they can become the #1 family of the Misty Mansion. What a fucking fart. Bai Qi Feng exploded. If those guards are really disobedient, would they still dare to entrust the safety of the 2 most important disciples of their family to them? The 6 of them were all venerable experts, yet they didn't listen to him? Who the hell would believe such bullshit? Are you trying to fool a 3-year-old? But the truth is as such. Because the Jean family claimed that they were not strict in their upbringing and management, such a huge matter happened. The manor lord ordered Zhang Wuyan to go back and reorganize the family, and to strictly discipline the family. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Chao Guofeng was a little puzzled and depressed. He slapped his thigh fiercely. Bai Qi Feng was even more indignant. I'll go find the manor lord right now. He couldn't let this matter go just like that. If he doesn't give us a satisfactory explanation, this old, I'll just barge into the Jean family's mansion. I can't play tricks, but can I beat people up? Calm down. If you continue to cause trouble like this, even if we're in the right, we won't be in the right anymore. Actually, the manor lord has also compensated us. He allowed Junyi to enter the inner pavilion's library twice a month to browse through the books. Other than that, the manor lord did not wait for the Jean family to request for permission to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. He even allowed the 7 of us to enter the spiritual herbal gardens together. Also, he ordered the Jean family to take out a divine weapon as compensation for Junyi. As he spoke, Chao Guofeng's interest waned. This is what the free and natural physique deserves. What kind of compensation is this? The only good thing is that the 7 of us can enter the spiritual herbal gardens. This old man would rather not go in. What's so good about entering that broken place? To actually treat it like a treasure, what kind of joke is this? Those Jean family bastards are nothing, and the manor lord doesn't even know what's right and wrong. How disappointing. Bai Qi Feng said angrily. Just be content with what you have. It's not easy for the manor lord either. Actually, speaking of this matter, the most unlucky ones are still not us. Our Junyi still received quite a few compensations, but the manor lord's family is even more depressed than us. Chao Guofeng sighed. We've all heard from Junyi that Junyi was not the only one who suffered an assassination attempt last night. Old Miao's precious daughter also happened to be there, and her shock was no less than Junye's. But that last did not get anything, and did not even mention it. Not easy, my ass. How could he mistreat his own granddaughter? Bai Qi Feng glared at him, revealing an aura of a hoodlum. Big brother, aren't you a little too stupid? You just believe whatever the manor lord says? Who knows, many of the benefits that originally belonged to Junyi were kept by that old thing and given to his own granddaughter. It's hard to know a man's heart. Nonsense. Shut your mouth. Chao Guofeng's face turned fierce. What are you saying? How can the manor lord be that kind of person? Furthermore, wasn't that brat the one who seduced the manor lord's daughter? Even the manor lord could do nothing about it. Right now, the Miao family is also in a mess. How would they have the time to ask the Jean family for compensation? Seduced someone's granddaughter? That Miao Xiao Miao? The #1 beauty of the younger generation in the Misty Mansion? Bai Qi Feng's eyes widened even more. Seeing Chao Guofeng nodding with a black face, Bai Qi Feng burst into laughter after a long time, slapping Jun Moxie's shoulder. Good lad. You're really something. It's only been a few days, and you've already taken down the manor lord's granddaughter. This kind of super speed, as expected of the free and natural physique. Jun Moxie's face darkened. What has this got to do with the free and natural physique? Besides, what have I done? I didn't even make any moves. And was it me who took her down? She was the one who took me down. Do you think I did it willingly? Who am I going to complain to? All right. The few of you hurry up and pack up. The manor lord and the rest of the aristocratic families heard that there was a miracle here and insisted on coming over to take a look. They should be arriving soon. Chao Guofeng hurriedly instructed. Actually, there wasn't much to tidy up here. Apart from the bamboo forest and grass that had been purposely left out, the rest had already been trampled flat by the few brothers. However, the effect of the power of wood didn't seem to be over yet. Who knew when a bamboo shoot would pop up from the ground? If there was someone sitting on the ground, and it just so happened to be a good spot, it would be quite lively. Sure enough, it didn't take long before a group of old fellows in white clothes arrived together as if they were riding on the clouds. The Miao family, the Zhan family, the Li family, the Gu family, the Meng family, the Qiu family, the Yun family, the Zhang family, the 8 aristocratic families of the Misty Mansion. Together with the manor lord of the Misty Mansion, Miao Jingyun, there were a total of 9 people. In addition to the 7 holy emperors, the entire courtyard was filled to the brim. Although Miao Jingyun was also a member of the Miao family, apart from being the manor lord of the Misty Mansion, he could no longer be the Miao family head. In fact, he could not even consider himself a member of the Miao family. Thus, the Miao family head was someone else. Seeing the scarlet jade ginseng and purple Ganoderma green essence that the few holy emperors took out, everyone clicked their tongues in wonder. Any one of them was a knowledgeable person. If there was anything fake, it naturally wouldn't be able to hide from their eyes. Furthermore, these heavenly treasures that Holy Emperor Chao and the rest had taken out were all good stuff, and definitely not something that could be easily obtained. Looking at the quality of the items, it was easy for them to determine the foundation. Looking at the courtyard full of Xiaoxiang phoenix tails, many of them revealed looks of envy in their eyes. This kind of pure rural scenery was definitely not something that could be created by artificial cultivation. Speaking of which, these 9 old men were all old friends that frequently came here for a stroll or two. It could be said that they were not unfamiliar with Chao Guofeng's courtyard at all. Previously, a few of these old fellows had thought that Chao Guofeng was just purposely exaggerating about his precious disciple with the free and natural physique, creating some sort of miracle so that it would be easier to promote his disciple. But now that they saw it with their own eyes, they instantly believed it. There was no other reason. No one had the ability to make a small patch of bamboo grow into a bamboo forest in a single night. Just this fact alone was enough to convince everyone. Not to mention those freshly baked heavenly treasures. The evidence was not limited to these. The vines surrounding the walls had thickened by several layers in a single night, and the ones in the innermost area had already withered. If one counted carefully, there were at least 100 layers of vines. 100 years in a single night was probably the most conservative estimate. The walls of Chao Guofeng's original courtyard were completely bare, and these things were definitely not allowed to exist. After all, they were too much of an eyesore. All these facts pointed to the fact that this place had indeed received the blessings of the gods last night. Understanding this point, 3 old men instantly had complicated expressions on their faces. One of them had a sharp glint in his eyes, a thin and somewhat cold old man. He looked at Jun Moxie with a conflicted look in his eyes. This person was the Zhan family's clan head, Zhan Wuyun. Another old man looked at Jun Moxie with a complicated expression. His stature was not much different from Zhan Wuyun's, just that there were many more wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. This old man was the Gu family's clan head, Gu Yunyang. He was also the biological grandfather of Gu Feiyu, who had been ravaged by Jun Moxie. He had met Jun Dashao once before, although that fate could not be considered as a good one. As for the last old man, he had a head of long, black hair that flowed behind his head. His expression was elegant, and his face was rosy. He exuded an imposing aura without being angry. Just by standing there, it was as if the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers were beneath his feet, and everything in the world was in his hands. This sort of aura could only be cultivated by someone who had been in a high position for a long time, wielding the power of life and death in their hands. This person was naturally the current Misty Mansion's lord, and also Miao Xiao Miao's biological grandfather, Miao Jingyun. Chapter 979. Miao Jingyun and Jun Dashao could be considered to have met before. Because when Jun Moxie first entered the Misty Mansion, it was Miao Jingyun who made the decision to let Dashao eat a set of 7 colored holy fruits. And that set of fruits was even fed to Dashao by this old man. Today, this was only the second time the two of them had met. Miao Jingyun's heart was also very complicated. It was this brat who had the talent of the free and natural physique that caused such a huge wave the moment he arrived. He'd only gone out for a day, and he'd crippled an outstanding descendant of the Gu family, and caused the Zhan family to be in a terrible predicament. Just these 2 matters alone were enough to cause the entire Misty Mansion to be in a state of chaos. Although these 2 matters were not his intention, they still started because of him. The root of the problem was still him. And the matters that had started because of him were far from over. On the same day, this brat had caused all these troubles, and at the same time, he'd stolen his granddaughter's heart. This was simply a troublemaker. Could an ordinary person do something like this? Ordinary people could not, but this prodigy with the free and natural physique had done it. So even the evaluation of troublemaker was already belittling him. This brat was the root of all trouble. On the surface, it only involved the Gu family and Zhan family. If the matter of his granddaughter falling in love with him was spread out, then this fellow would immediately become the target of all the younger generation of the Misty Mansion. Even though he was already the target of all. Everyone knew that the 8 great families of the Misty Mansion were at the top of the pyramid. Which one of them did not have a few youngsters who could not forget their granddaughters? Right now, he'd only been here for 5 to 6 days, and he'd already accomplished the goal that everyone had fought so hard to achieve. How could he not attract the envy and jealousy of everyone? Miao Jingyun sighed in his heart and looked at this brat. But this fellow actually had an expression that was asking for a beating, as if he was completely unaware of the trouble that was about to come. In fact, when he saw him looking at him, he even grinned, revealing a mouthful of teeth. Do you think that your teeth are very white? Miao Jingyun was completely enraged. What are you grinning for? Don't you know that I'm about to have a headache because of you? If you're really capable and have superhuman abilities, it's fine if you're a saint. But with your little bit of Xian Qi, any disciple of an aristocratic family could probably poke you to death with one finger. What are you being so smug about? This kind of trash actually made Xiao Miao fall in love with him. It seemed that even his little face wasn't very white. What did Xiao Miao see in him? Just as everyone was exchanging pleasantries, Miao Jingyun unexpectedly beckoned to Jun Moxie. "Mo Junyi, come here." Jun Moxie thought to himself, could it be that this old man wants to settle accounts with me? But I really didn't do anything to your granddaughter. Actually, I was the passive one. Not to mention that Jun Dashao didn't say it out loud. Even if he did, would anyone believe him? With regards to last night's matter, as the person involved, what do you think? Unexpectedly, Miao Jingyun's first question was this. If it was anyone else, this question would be too easy to answer. It was a genuine miracle. How else could they look at it? But when it was the free and natural physique expert himself, it was not easy to answer. Everyone had already unanimously agreed that it was because of the existence of the free and natural physique expert in this courtyard that there was such a miracle. But others could say that, but for Jun Moxie to say it himself, it was not possible. It was natural for others to make Dashao a legend. But for him to make himself a legend, that was not appropriate. But if he didn't say that, what else could he say? This was simply too difficult to advance or retreat, right? Manor Lord, I only chatted with your granddaughter for a while last night. I really didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, you can go back and ask. Miss Miao's personal maid, Miss Little Bean Sprout, can testify for us. The absent-minded Jun Moxie replied in confusion. But it was clear that this fellow's brain had gone astray, directly giving a completely different answer. The moment this sentence left his mouth, the faces of the various family heads and the Chao Guofeng brothers all twitched strangely. All he did was chat with her, and he didn't do anything? What else do you want to do? How exactly do you want to do it? No matter how wise Miao Jingyun was, no matter how astute he was, no matter how mature he was, he would never have imagined that he would hear such a ridiculous answer. Hearing that, his nose almost went crooked from anger. What the hell was that? Jun Dashao looked at his expression and finally confirmed one thing in his heart. He'd often heard people say that one's nose would go crooked from anger. In the past, he'd thought that it was just an exaggerated description, and no one would really have their nose go crooked from anger. But looking at this Misty Mansion Manor Lord now, it just happened to verify this point. So when a person was angry, their nose would indeed go crooked. This old man did not ask you about this. Miao Jingyun's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. This brat? To think that he was trying to cover for them. In the end, he actually confessed everything without being pressed. He'd thought that this brat had some brains, but from the looks of it, he was just a rash bird. Then what you're asking about is? Jun Moxie was stunned. So it turned out that he'd expressed his feelings wrongly. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. That's right, the matter last night was really dangerous. It's all my fault, offending people for no reason, and almost implicating young Miss Miao. It's all my fault. Everyone was stunned again. What was this fellow talking about again? Only after listening did they understand that he was talking about last night. Last night, 6 masked men suddenly appeared and stopped me. All of them were experts. They said that I had offended people that I shouldn't have offended, so they wanted to get rid of me. I was puzzled. I've only been here for a few days, and the number of people I know can be counted on my fingers. How could I have offended anyone? But they did not allow me to explain, and wanted to make their move. That situation was truly a close call, and extremely dangerous. Even I thought that it was going to be a tragedy this time, but at that critical moment, they suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Jun Moxie continued to ramble on. Stuff. Miao Jingyun shouted angrily. This old man is not asking about this matter. The entire Zhan family is still in the dark about this matter. This old man was not prepared to say anything about the mysterious experts in the Misty Mansion, who would have thought that this brat would almost spill the beans, but these 2 interruptions have really tarnished this old man's image. You brat, you're really too hateful. This old man was asking about last night's miracles. What do you think? Miao Jingyun decided to come straight to the point, not beating around the bush anymore. Who knew what kind of nonsense he'd spout if he continued to beat around the bush? Miracles? Oh, so that's what you're talking about. Jun Moxie finally understood. Wouldn't you have understood if you'd said so earlier? Why were you being so vague just now, causing this daddy to misunderstand? I thought that you're here to seek justice for your granddaughter. Actually, Jun Moxie could not be blamed for not thinking about this matter. But because this matter was caused by him in the first place. In Jun Dashao's eyes, this matter was not worth mentioning at all. This daddy still needs to find a chance to hasten the growth of your rainbow holy tree later. What's the big deal about growing a few bamboos? What's the big deal? Therefore, Jun Emosia had not thought about this aspect at all. Therefore, this had led to the current awkward situation. Besides, the moment Dashao saw Miao Jingyun, he immediately thought of Miao Xiaomiao due to his guilty conscience. Subconsciously, he was certain that this old man was here to question him about his granddaughter. Who knows, he might even force himself on me and force me to marry his granddaughter. If it's not this matter, what else could it be? Miao Jingyun suppressed the rage in his heart and tried his best to maintain the dignity of the manor lord of the Misty Mansion. But he felt that he could not hold it in any longer, and he was about to spew smoke from his 7 orifices. Actually, from the way I see it, that strange matter yesterday was probably just a coincidence. Jun Moxie also relaxed and continued. Ever since the Xian continent was founded, there have been countless miracles on the continent. Many places have countless legends about them. There are even people who say that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the main battlefield of the war for seizing the heavens, was purposely created by the gods, and among the commoners, there are also stories of immortals descending to the mortal world. Until now, there are still many families who worship the gods in their homes, hoping that the gods can bless their family with peace, a bumper harvest, good weather, and peace. It said that in Tianxiang, there was such a story about the gods, and in the Great Plains, there are also people who worship the wolf god. And the number of miracles in the Great Plains, even the high officials of the imperial court believe in miracles. There are many strange stories, such as, even the emperors of the past, such as, there were a total of 16 old fellows here. Today, their ears had been broadened, and their knowledge had been broadened. All of them stared at Jun Moxie in a daze, spittle flying everywhere as he rambled on and on. From Tianxiang to the Great Plains, from the continent to the strange races, from the commoners to the high officials, and even the emperors of the past. He was really fucking knowledgeable. He was really fucking knowledgeable. But today, could it be that we're here to listen to you talk about these legends and legends? The 16 old fellows, including Chao Guofeng and the rest, all wanted nothing more than to grab this fellow and give him a good beating. Why is this fellow's mouth so shameless? In conclusion, the matter of miracles. Jun Moxie rambled on and on, finally reaching the main topic. All the old fellows felt their spirits rise. You brat, you finally can't avoid it anymore, right? Let's see how you explain last night's events. In that instant, all of them pricked up their ears in schadenfreude. Especially Zhang Wuyun and Gu Yunyang. They looked like they were watching a good show. Actually, it's all very vague and hard to grasp, and there's no way to predict it. You asked for my opinion, but in truth, I'm not too sure what's going on either. That's all I have to say. If there's anything I don't understand, Jun Moxie nodded his head humbly and smiled. Please guide me. Chapter 980. So it turns out that us bunch of old bones have been listening to you for close to 2 hours under the sun, and it's actually all rubbish that can't be any more rubbish? Could he be any more shameless than that? They were truly audacious to the extreme. To actually dare to answer the question of the manor lord of the Misty Mansion like this. From the looks of it, Jun Moxie was also feeling helpless. This old fellow is asking this question purely to make fun of this young master. If I say that it has nothing to do with me, then it's definitely me being conceited and not knowing the slightest bit of humility. In fact, I might even be overjoyed, boasting and praising myself without any sense of shame. Even if I have any achievements in the future, it will be extremely limited. But if I say that it has nothing to do with me, then it means that I have no confidence at all, and I might not have any achievements in the future either. Cultivators pursue the pinnacle their entire lives. How can they do it without confidence? Jun Moxie could already imagine that the moment he answered according to the script in their hearts, he would immediately attract a round of attacks. Because this was a trap. In any case, no matter how he answered, it would be wrong. From that old man surnamed Miao's gleaming eyes that seemed to harbor malicious intentions, it was completely obvious, with this young master's intelligence, how could he fall for such a trick? So Jun Dashao came up with an erudite and knowledgeable account of the past and present, quoting the classics and making a bunch of nonsense. Finally, he came to a conclusion. Miracles are something that cannot be explained. And, if you say that you can explain it, then you can give an explanation on the spot. This young master will not accompany you. Everyone had already expected that Miao Jingyun would definitely fly into a rage this time. Even Chao Guofeng, Bai Qifeng, and the rest were sweating profusely. This brat is truly too daring. Although this question is truly difficult for you, and it's really difficult to answer it directly, but it's really too rash of you to play tricks on people like this. If old Miao gives a word, who knows, this brat's glorious future might just come to a premature end. Unexpectedly, after Miao Jingyun heard the last few sentences of Jun Moxie, his face darkened for a long time. Then, he suddenly smiled and said, "Good lad, you do have a sharp tongue. You're really something." He laughed a few times, and the matter was actually left unsettled. This result really made the heads of all the aristocratic families drop their jaws. Then, everyone started chatting. Jun Moxie politely answered the questions of the seniors, then tactfully excused himself and returned to his room, no longer participating in the gathering of these old fellows. However, Jun Dashao noticed that even though he had returned to his room, there were still 8 or 9 strands of divine senses that were tightly locked onto him and following him for a long time. It seemed to be observing his every word and action, including his every expression, the movement and contraction of every inch of his muscles, regardless of whether they were big or small. This was because only the tiniest things could detect the true reflection beneath one's concealment. Jun Moxie wasn't interested in paying attention to them. He just sneered in his heart, "I'm tired of all the tricks you've used. Since you're so concerned about me, I might as well give you another surprise." Having made up his mind, he sat down cross-legged with his 5 hearts facing the heavens. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. The few family heads looked at each other in bewilderment, and they could see the shock and admiration in each other's eyes. After being questioned by someone as important as the Misty Mansion's Manor Lord, which young talent would be able to maintain his composure and continue to cultivate? This was originally an impossible matter. But this free and natural physique prodigy didn't seem to mind at all. The moment he returned to his room, he immediately entered into a meditative state. Just this calmness alone had already surpassed all the so-called outstanding youths in the Misty Mansion by several levels. As expected of the free and natural physique prodigy, just look at his calm demeanor. It's already the demeanor of a great family. Chao Guofeng and the rest were even more pleased, feeling that they had gained a lot of face. The happiest one was naturally the master when the disciple did well. An amused smile hung on Miao Jingyun's face as he looked at Jun Moxie a few times with a thoughtful expression, but he didn't know what he was thinking in his heart. Everyone just sat in a circle in the bamboo forest, chatting idly. None of them had any intention of leaving. Clearly, they were planning to stay here for lunch. A miracle had appeared here, and it was only right for them to celebrate. Chao Guofeng was already prepared for this, and he waved his hands to instruct the kitchen servants to quickly prepare. Right at this moment, a ray of silver light suddenly appeared. At the same time, a strand of dazzling and resplendent golden light shot out from within that ray of silver light in a dignified manner. And the direction that the golden light was heading towards was the room that Jun Dashao was in. Chao Guofeng and Bai Qifeng's faces instantly changed, and they rushed over with a schwa sound. The group of big shots also felt their hearts skip a beat, and they hurried over to take a look. When they got closer and took a closer look, everyone's hearts shook, and a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. On that free and natural physique prodigy, half of his body was shining with a brilliant silver light, while the other half was slowly turning into a golden light. This was a situation that would only appear when one broke through to the Gold Xian realm. Chao Guofeng rubbed his hands together anxiously. Why did he break through at this time? Why did he break through at this time? This. There was no preparation at all. Holy Emperor Chao's face was filled with exasperation, and the faces of the other 6 holy emperors were also filled with shock and worry. The shock in the hearts of all the family heads was even greater. It turned out that this free and natural physique prodigy's breakthrough this time was something that even Holy Emperor Chao did not know about. In other words, this time, it was a spontaneous breakthrough. In an instant, everyone's faces changed. One must know that when Mo Junyi first came, his strength was very low, only at the Silver Xian middle level. There were still Silver Xian high level and Silver Xian peak level before he reached the Silver Xian peak. Even if he reached the Silver Xian peak level, he would still need to comprehend and have a considerable amount of luck to break through to the Gold Xian realm. But who would have thought that in just a short 5 to 6 days, this lad would actually break through to the Gold Xian realm in one go? This kind of advancement speed was truly unheard of. Although he had eaten the 7-colored holy fruit before, if the medicinal energy of the 7-colored holy fruit was not stimulated by the exquisite lotus, it would only exist in his meridians to nourish his body, and did not have any special effect of directly increasing his cultivation. Besides, when he first came, he was still in a heavily injured state, on the verge of death. Even if the 7-colored holy fruit had pulled his life back, he still needed to recuperate. Who would have thought that he would actually break through in just 5 to 6 days? 5 to 6 days ago, on the verge of death, and 5 to 6 days later, there was a qualitative leap? This kind of shocking fact had truly surpassed the knowledge of everyone present. Everyone fell into a state of awkwardness and stupefaction. Everyone here was an expert that had reached the level of the Holy Emperor, and many of them were even patriarchs of various families. To be able to reach this level, which one of them was not a genius amongst geniuses? But no matter how much of a genius they were, they had never even heard of such a miraculous cultivation speed, a true monster. The few of you didn't feed him anything in these few days, right? Miao Jingyun looked at Jun Moxie cautiously and turned his head to ask Chao Guofeng. No. He did not eat anything that was extremely nourishing. We considered that he had just recovered from his injuries, and if he did not receive any nourishment, it would definitely cause the opposite effect. How can everyone not understand this little bit of common sense? Chao Guofeng rubbed his hands, his face still filled with anxiety. Right now, he was in the midst of breaking through, and he could only rely on himself for everything. No wonder Holy Emperor Chao was so anxious. If it was before or after, he would have been able to lend a helping hand. But right now, it was definitely impossible. I didn't eat anything. Miao Jingyun sucked in a deep breath. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the silver light on Jun Moxie's body turned into a dazzling golden light. Then, with a huge flash, all of it disappeared, returning back into his body. This was a phenomenon that would only occur when one had completely and successfully broken through. Everyone's eyeballs popped out all over the ground. Firstly, he did not have a master to guide him. Secondly, he did not have sufficient accumulation beforehand. Thirdly, he did not make any special preparations, and did not seem to have taken any spirit herbs or heavenly treasures to aid in breaking through. This young man, under such strange circumstances, that no one had expected, he had broken through. He had broken through for no reason at all. And it was the most perfect breakthrough. All the patriarchs turned their heads and stared fixedly at Chao Guofeng, Bai Qifeng, and the rest of the 7 holy emperors. In their eyes, there was undisguised envy and jealousy. On what basis such a good material would be caught by Chao Guofeng and the rest? This was simply like a cabbage being eaten by a pig. What a waste of such a good material. If the ones who met him were us, how good would that be? Only old Master Miao's expression was slightly different. His gaze was filled with envy and jealousy, but there was a hint of joy. But as someone who was used to the ways of the world, he turned to Chao Guofeng and said, I say, old Chao, what time is it now? It's not easy for us to come here. You won't let us leave on an empty stomach, right? How's the preparation of the lunch that you ordered? This old man is really a little hungry now. Could it be that a single meal can make you poor? Hurry up and eat. These words made it seem like with this old Master Miao's cultivation, not to mention a single meal, even if he did not eat for 10 days, he would not feel hungry. Very clearly, he was not really hungry. He was just using this topic to divert everyone's attention. Chao Guofeng could clearly feel that the Manor Lord's attitude towards him had become much more casual. This sort of casualness indicated a kind of acknowledgement, a kind of regard, and closeness. Holy Emperor Chao was very clear about his own limitations. Although his strength was considered high, and he had already reached the 3rd level of the Holy Emperor realm, this level of strength was not enough for the Manor Lord to treat him so favorably. The only thing that could explain this was that precious disciple who had successfully broken through inside. Chao Guofeng suddenly felt very agitated. It was not entirely because of Miao Jingyun's intimacy, but more for his own disciple. Chapter 981. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Jun Dashao was finally done showing off. He guessed that these fellows must have been shocked enough by his performance. Only then did he slowly end his cultivation. In his heart, he was still a little unsatisfied. These people's mental endurance is really too weak. Every time this young master breaks through, it's always by tens of levels. Right now, I've only jumped 3 levels. Actually, I can't even compare to those subordinates under me. Just this little bit of progress is enough to shock all you old fellows so much that your eyeballs are popping out. Originally, this young master was planning to continue breaking through to Yuxian, Xian, Tian Xian. But from the looks of it, it seems like there's no need for that for the time being. I'll just break through when I have a use for it in the future. Spinning his hands, Jun Dashao opened his eyes and looked at the heated gazes around him. What's wrong? Why are all the seniors looking at me like that? I washed my face today, and I just took a bath yesterday, and there's no weird smell on my body, As he said that, he raised his arm and sniffed it. Everyone looked at this free and natural physique prodigy. If not for the fact that they had hundreds of years of cultivation and were able to maintain their composure, all of them would have stumbled a few times by now. This fellow was still in a daze. You brat, you broke through your bottleneck just now. Could it be that you don't even know it yourself? Zhang Wuyun looked at Jun Moxie with a strange gaze. His expression was extremely complicated. Broke through? Jun Moxie scratched his head. I don't feel anything, It's no different from when I was cultivating normally, Even though everyone had hundreds of years of cultivation, they could no longer bear it and fainted. It's better not to ask. The legendary free and natural physique is just like that. There are no bottlenecks or obstructions in his body at all. How could he feel anything? Miao Jingyun shook his head speechlessly and gave a reasonable explanation. He wouldn't know even if you ask him. If he feels anything, it might not be a good thing. Oh. As expected, the Manor Lord's words make sense. Everyone was enlightened, and their gazes grew even more heated as they looked at this young prodigy with the free and natural physique. Originally, they had only heard of it and did not think much of it. But now that it was happening right in front of their eyes, how could they possibly remain indifferent? Old Chao, has your disciple found a wife yet? The head of the Zhang clan grinned as he hugged Chao Guofeng's shoulder. Squinting his eyes, he said, This old man has a granddaughter. She's only 16 years old, and she's as beautiful as a flower. She's around the same age as your disciple. It can be said that they're a match made in heaven. I don't have the luck to get such a good disciple, but that doesn't stop me from using another method to form a relationship. Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng very reservedly removed the Zhang clan head's hand from his shoulder. Please don't be so intimate with me. I'm not that familiar with you, and I'm not worthy of you. I'm not worthy of you. Everyone present was a wily old fox. How could they not understand Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng's words? There were two layers of meaning in not worthy of you. One was a tactful rejection, and the other was a high-profile rejection. What kind of person was my disciple? How could your granddaughter be worthy of him? Although the Zhang clan head returned in defeat, it immediately gave the other clan head some inspiration. However, we can form a marriage alliance with that prodigy. This is the most effective weapon. If we succeed, half of this free and natural physique prodigy's body will become part of our family. It might not be any worse than a master-disciple relationship. Thus, the old fogies all grabbed onto Chao Guofeng and his brothers, each serving one of them. In an instant, it was as though they were in a market. Only old brother Bai Chi Feng sat idly by the side. The other clan heads all knew that this fellow was a firecracker. His words were the most unpleasant to hear, and his actions were even more unreliable. Thus, no one sought him out for a discussion. It wasn't that they were afraid that he wouldn't agree. After all, that wouldn't be too surprising. The most important thing was that they were afraid that this fellow would say something that they couldn't accept. If that happened, it would be too embarrassing in front of so many people. Furthermore, they couldn't even flare up. Even Gu Yunyang was shamelessly standing in front of Chao Guofeng, talking about the friendship between the two of them, as if the two of them had been friends for many years. Chao Guofeng, Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng, had lived through hundreds of years, but he had never experienced such an awkward situation before. Under the encirclement of so many people, he was sweating profusely and cut a sorry figure. If it was just that, it wouldn't have been so bad. But he could still feel two sharp gazes piercing into his back, causing him to break out in cold sweat. Those two gazes came from the Lord of the Misty Mansion, Miao Jingyun. Old Chao understood the meaning behind Miao Jingyun's gaze very well. Old Chao, your disciple and my granddaughter are still in a mess. My granddaughter has already done that to your disciple. If you dare to mess around with him again, this old man will immediately roast you. Just as everyone was quarreling happily, A sudden voice caused everyone to stop, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What? Don't joke around. Just those repulsive people in your family actually have the cheek to have designs on this daddy's precious disciple. Jean Woo-yun, did you take the wrong medicine, forget to take your medicine, or eat fake medicine? Why are you spouting such nonsense? This sentence with a double meaning was said very loudly, and the person who spoke was none other than Bai Qifeng, Holy Emperor Bai Qifeng. Everyone looked over, only to see the Zhan family's patriarch Jean Woo-yun's face turning red like a monkey's butt. He glared angrily at Bai Qifeng. It turned out that Jean Woo-yun had considered for a long time, and he felt that if he could make use of marriage to win over this prodigy with the free and natural physique, it would not be a bad idea. He could also use this opportunity to dissolve the enmity between both sides, and he could even rope in the other 7 holy emperors to help the Zhan family. This was definitely a good deal with low capital and huge profits. After making up his mind, he wanted to say something, but the other 6 holy emperors were being pestered by others. If he went over now, he would undoubtedly be asking for trouble. After all, the positions of both sides were still very delicate. Coincidentally, Bai Qifeng saw him standing at the side and strode over, intending to settle old scores with him. Jean Woo-yun saw that Bai Qifeng had come, and it was exactly what he wanted. He pulled Bai Qifeng back and expressed his intentions in an extremely soft voice, expressing that he was willing to marry off his daughter to great prodigy Mo, and the 2 families would bury the hatchet, from enemies to in-laws. Jean Woo-yun's idea was not bad. With the Zhan family's strength, this was not to take advantage of Mo Junyi and the other 7 holy emperors. Both sides could be said to be mutually beneficial, and it was a strong alliance. But the person that Jean Woo-yun was asking was too problematic. If Jean Woo-yun had found Chao Guofeng or the other 5 holy emperors, these 6 brothers would have considered it carefully. At the very least, they would not reject him on the spot. At most, they would just tactfully reject him. But Jean Woo-yun just had to find the most free holy emperor, Bai Qifeng. Bai Qifeng's belly was about to explode with anger. Not to mention the marriage that Jean Woo-yun was talking about, even if the Zhan family offered the position of patriarch to Mo Junyi, Bai Qifeng would still give him a big slap on the back. After being ridiculed for a long time, Jean Woo-yun's face was completely red, and he had no way to back down. Before he could think of what to say, Bai Qifeng continued. What, now that you see that your disciple's future is limitless, you finally know fear? Just giving away a woman and you want to resolve the problem? How can there be such a good thing in this world? Besides, which daughter of your Zhan family dares to marry? Every single one of them is either a tigress or a lioness. Every now and then, they would come out to pick up dirt. Just like that young lad who had just married into the Zhan family last year. Wasn't he crushed to death by a green hat? You still have the cheek to ask for this kind of trash. Jean Woo-yun almost couldn't breathe. His eyes were wide with rage as he pointed a finger at Bai Qifeng. Bai Qifeng. You? What nonsense are you spouting? I'm spouting nonsense? How am I spouting nonsense? Ask everyone here, which one of them doesn't know? You still have the cheek to say that I'm spouting nonsense? To tell you the truth, if not for the fact that my disciple is involved today, just talking about those women in your family is too dirty for this old man. Bai Qifeng said arrogantly with his hands on his hips, completely fearless. All the old fogies couldn't help but laugh. This matter was indeed a huge scandal for the Zhan family. The main character of the scandal was the daughter of a concubine of the Zhan family. After the marriage ceremony last year, she had messed around with the servants, and in the end, her new husband was so angry that he hanged himself outside the woodshed where the adulterers were having an affair. The adulterers had not finished their business inside when they suddenly heard a commotion outside. Naturally, they were shocked and looked through the crack of the door to see the groom hanging outside with his tongue hanging out. In the end, they screamed and ran out of the woodshed naked, and right at this time, they were caught red-handed by the Zhan family's patrolling guards. Then, it was easy to imagine what happened. Although the Zhan family tried their best to hide this matter, as the saying goes, good news doesn't leave the house, bad news travels 1,000 miles. Somehow, the news spread out and became a joke in the Misty Mansion. Zhan Wuyun was mocked by everyone many times, and some busybodies even gave him a nickname, Head of the Cuckold Family. As the head of the family, how could Zhan Wuyun tolerate this matter? After a few big fights, no one mentioned this matter anymore. After all, with the Zhan family's power, it was fine to joke about it, but if it really involved the dignity of the head of the family, then it would be a huge matter. Not long after, Zhan Wuyun executed the adulterers on the spot, officially putting an end to this matter. Who would have thought that at this critical juncture, this scar would be exposed by Qi Feng again? How could Zhan Wuyun not be angry? Chapter 982. By Qi Feng. You old bastard with a mouth full of sh*t. This old man will fight it out with you. Zhan Wuyun's rage was unquenchable as he pounced forward. But this daddy has been waiting for you for a long time. Bai Qi Feng did not back down as he laughed maniacally. Fuck, it's your Zhan family's daughter's actions that others can't say anything about. Watch this daddy teach you, this green hat family head, a lesson. The moment the words green hat family head came out, Zhan Wuyun's eyes turned green with anger. In an instant, these two old men began to fight fiercely. Two white figures spun around at high speed before rising into the air at the same time, exchanging punches and kicks all the way up into the air. Chao Guofeng shouted for them to stop, but the two of them did not seem to hear him at all. Bai Qi Feng had long been filled with rage due to the assassination attempt on his precious disciple. Now that he finally had a heaven-sent opportunity, how could he not vent his anger? Zhan Wuyun was even more furious. He had clearly not done anything, and had even sincerely tried to resolve the enmity between the two families. But he had suffered such an undeserved calamity, being insulted to his face and exposing his scars. He truly felt extremely wronged. Fuck, didn't you just take in a disciple with the free and natural physique? Is that so great that you can bully others as you please? Others might be wary of you 7 holy emperors, but our Zhan family is not. Although both sides had not reached the level of a life-and-death battle, they were already fighting with all their might. Unfortunately, these two people were both second-grade Saint Emperors, and were evenly matched in strength. The two of them were twisting and turning in the air, causing waves of qi to sweep out, shattering the clouds in the sky. Yet, not a single sound of the wind could be heard. Clearly, the two of them were still carefully controlling the flow of qi in their battle. Enough. Miao Jingyun's face was as dark as still water as he roared. Along with this shout, the entire courtyard shook with a boom. Even the air seemed to have ripples that could be clearly seen. Jun Moxie's heart skipped a beat as he looked over. The mansion master of the Misty Mansion was extraordinarily powerful. His cultivation was definitely above the level of the Holy Emperor. Just this shout alone contained a shattering power that belonged to the spatial level. Moreover, these two short words clearly expressed a subtle feeling that made everyone want to bow their heads and obey his orders. With a shout, Bai Qi Feng and Zhan Wuyun both stopped and landed at the same time. Are you two still young? To let your emotions affect your decisions, everything ends here. Miao Jingyun said slowly. That bout of venting just now should be enough. If we fight in private again, don't blame me for not showing mercy. Even if this old man wants to talk about friendship, there is no such thing as friendship in the mansion's rules. Everyone present was clear that if Miao Jingyun had stopped them from the start, the two of them would not have fought at all. However, both of them had a belly full of anger. If they were not allowed to vent it out, it would be hard to avoid more trouble in the future. So Miao Jingyun decided to let them fight to their heart's content first. This was also a method to control his subordinates. Jun Moxie's sharp senses grasped this point, and his respect for Miao Xiaomiao's grandfather increased by a few notches. After everyone finished their lunch, all the family heads felt that there was no excuse to stay any longer. Thus, they all stood up and bade their farewells. Only when they were about to leave did Miao Jingyun turn to Jun Moxie and say with a smile, "Little doll Mo, it will be this old man's 500th birthday 3 days later. At that time, you brat should come as well." As soon as these words left his mouth, all the family heads looked at June Moxie with a hint of warmth in their eyes. The Misty Mansion Manor Master had actually personally invited a young man to attend his birthday banquet. What kind of honor was this? 500th birthday, so this old fellow is already 500 years old, and his granddaughter is only 18 or 19, looks like she's also a pretty girl. June Moxie's heart also skipped a beat. This old fellow is too shameless to actually dare to openly ask for a birthday gift. This is a blatant bribe. This young master's family background is already thin to begin with. If all the family heads knew of June Moxie's thoughts, they would probably spit on him to death. The Misty Mansion Manor Master, Miao Jingyun, what kind of person was that? Why would he care about a birthday gift from a junior like you? What other good things can you take out? It was very clear that they did not understand June Dashao's background at all. With those rare things in Dashao's hands, there was probably no one in the world who would not care about them. But no one knew about this matter. After receiving June Moxie's confirmation, Miao Jingyun nodded his head in satisfaction. Then he instructed Chao Guofeng and the rest to go to the main palace of the Misty Mansion to look for him. Only then did he leave with a faint smile. The various family heads also disappeared without a trace. Noticing the gazes of the 7 holy emperors, June Moxie instantly knew that things were bad. These old fellows were definitely going to ask him about his breakthrough. What kind of person was June Moxie? He furrowed his brows and a plan came to his mind. Suddenly, he yawned and put on a sleepy face. I'm really tired. I didn't sleep well last night. Then you brat, hurry up and go to sleep. The 7 holy emperors roared in unison. June Moxie slipped back to his room like a wisp of smoke. How could such a trashy trick work? However, Dashao's current room was no longer the one he was originally sleeping in. It had been changed due to June Moxie's insistence. And there was also a very good reason, to better absorb heaven-earth-ling qi. Thus, June Dashao's new room was set up by the wall of the courtyard. This naturally made things much easier for June Dashao. The moment the door closed, June Moxie heaved a sigh of relief from behind the door. In the afternoon, Chao Guofeng and the rest reminded June Moxie not to go out casually. After that, they instructed the servants to take good care of him. Only then did they leave to discuss matters. The topic of discussion this time was very obvious. It was definitely related to the future development of this free and natural physique possessor, June Moxie. As his masters, all 7 of them had to be present. June Moxie watched as the 7 men left. He then instructed the servants that he was going to sleep, and that no one was to disturb him unless it was an important matter. Then he returned to his room, and used the yin-yang escape to get out of the room. The sun shone brightly, but this specter June Moxie was still able to move unimpeded. There was nothing he could do. The yin-yang escape was simply too heaven-defying. As he flew, June Moxie seemed to be able to hear the bloodthirsty cry of the blood of yellow flame. This caused the killing intent in his heart to grow stronger and stronger. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu had schemed against him time and time again. With June Moxie's vengeful temper, how could he tolerate it? It was already not an easy thing for him to be able to tolerate it until now. Right now, everything was ready. In the past, it was only because he wanted to obtain the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens through a bet with the Zhang family. That was why he didn't make a move. Right now, even the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens that he wanted had been specially approved by the Misty Mansion. Then what did June Moxie have to worry about? Naturally, he was going to be unbridled. As long as he didn't expose his identity, there was no problem in doing anything. So June Moxie decided not to let those 2 brothers of the Zhang family live any longer. Since they provoked this young master, they must pay the corresponding price. Your family's house arrest is obviously not enough to satisfy the punishment that this young master has for you. Thinking about how these 2 bastards actually had such perverted thoughts towards Miao Xiao Miao, June Moxie felt that he couldn't just sit back and watch. No matter who you are, I'll kill you without mercy. Along the way, his position was getting higher and higher. Gradually, he was above the clouds, and his field of vision was clear. June Moxie wanted to make use of this high realm to observe everything below. As far as the eye could see, The mountain where the misty illusory manor's main palace was located was the main peak. Once again, he flew into the clouds and came to the sky above the Jean family's red light. Without any hesitation, he went to the core of the red light to take a closer look. Only then did Jun Moxie realize that at the core of the red light, there was an extremely strong evil yin qi. It was precisely this evil yin qi that had seeped downwards and forcefully severed the connection between the Miao family's mountain peak and the main mountain peak. What was even more outrageous was that it had actually used some unknown method to transfer the Miao family's fate energy to the Zhan family. The fate energy of the two strongest families had merged into one, resulting in the current situation where one family was the strongest. So that's how it is. Jun Moxie frowned. Looks like there's someone in the Zhan family who knows about the changes in feng shui? And it should be something that only an expert in this field could do. If that's the case, I'm afraid the Zhan family's conspiracy has been going on for at least a few generations. They can be said to be extremely scheming and scheming. Jun Moxie snorted coldly. Based on the current situation, the stability of the Misty Mansion is the most advantageous situation for the Miao family, Chao Guofeng, and the other 6 holy emperors. I shall eliminate the biggest danger in the Misty Mansion and use this as my repayment to the people in the Misty Mansion. Thinking up to here, Jun Moxie's yin-yang escape suddenly reached its maximum speed and shot down with a whoosh. Facing the flourishing luck of the Zhan family, he was like a sharp sword, piercing down without any hesitation. No matter what kind of dragon's pool or tiger's den your Zhan family is, since this young master is here today, I'll turn your world upside down. Plotting against me, you'll have to suffer my wrath and revenge. At this time, the Zhan family's patriarch, Zhan Wuyun, had already returned to the Zhan family. He was in a secret chamber discussing with the important members of the Zhan family. There were only 6 people in the entire secret chamber, and 4 of them had never appeared during the family's secret meeting. As for the other 2, other than Patriarch Zhan Wuyun, there was only Zhan Luanhui. Among the other 4, the one in the middle was a man with a sallow complexion and emaciated skin. He looked like a zombie, with not a single ounce of flesh on his body. He looked like a skeleton with a layer of human skin hanging on it. This person was an ancestor-like figure of the Zhan family. His name was Zhan Tianji. He was the legendary figure of the Misty Mansion 3,000 years ago, Tianji. The one on the left had a rosy complexion and looked to be in his 50s or 60s at most. He had a kind and amiable look on his face. Even if he didn't speak, he had a smile on his face. This was innate. His name had the word Shao in it. His name was Zhan Yishao. Don't look at how amiable he looked, but he was a snake with a snake's mouth. He was nicknamed the Smiling Butcher. One could imagine how cruel he was. As for the one on the right, his face was the complete opposite of Zhan Yishao's. His face was icy cold, and he had a cold aura that kept people at arm's length. And this person's eyes were as cruel as a wolf's. This person had a venomous heart and a cold sword, Zhan Tu. As for the one on the outermost, he was a middle-aged man who looked like a merchant. He had an amiable air about him, and his face was ordinary like that of a wealthy man. There was nothing special about him, and he looked like the kind of person that would be hard to pick out in a crowd, but this person was the scariest among the 4. This person had the terrifying record of killing 3,000 people in a single night. Even after the incident, his expression did not change. When he returned home at dawn, there was not a trace of killing intent left on his body. There was nothing special about this person's name, Earth-Penetrating Hand, Zhan Xiao Xiao. Just from the sound of his name, it sounded like it belonged to a woman. Who would believe that such a person would be the scariest person among the 4 ferocious men? But it was this kind of calmness that was truly the scariest thing about him. Any one of these 4 people from the Zhan family was an unfathomable existence. But sitting here right now, they only occupied one side of the room. Family head Zhan Wuyun occupied the other side. And the person in the middle was actually Zhan Luanhui. You've also seen that free and natural physique today. Do you have any specific feelings? Jean Luanhui's pale face appeared even more demonic under the light of the secret room. It was colder than a dead man. Jean Wuyun took a deep breath and said respectfully, "Very strong. His potential is extremely great. But today, I witnessed with my own eyes that this Mo Junyi broke through from silver Xian to golden Xian. This is something that cannot be faked. Did a miracle really happen there?" Jean Luanhui's eyes were a dead gray. When he looked at Jean Wuyun, even someone as close as Jean Wuyun felt a chill run down his spine. The instant growth of the plant, this sort of thing cannot be faked. Jean Wuyun said honestly. In that case, this Mo Junyi is really like a genius that descended from the heavens? Jean Luanhui's tone was filled with surprise. A strange phenomenon actually appeared between the heavens and earth because of him. In that case, he didn't continue speaking, but his eyes shone brightly. It was no longer that deathly gray color, but instead filled with hope and longing. Jean Yishao and the others looked at each other and nodded thoughtfully. Jean Luanhui said slowly, "Could it be that the legendary heavens really exist? Heavens really exist?" This sentence completely short-circuited Jean Wuyun's brain. Because he finally understood what this old ancestor of the Jean family wanted. However, it doesn't matter if he has the legendary free and natural physique or is chosen by the heavens. But right now, he only has the cultivation of an ant. We can turn him into ashes with just a wave of our hands. Wuyun, how did they react when you took the initiative to express goodwill to them? Jean Luanhui rubbed his bony fingers lightly on the table. His movements were very slow. Although he had the appearance of a young man, this action was an action that could only be done by a genuine old man. They did not agree. In fact, Bai Qifeng even brought up the scandal of our Jean family to humiliate me. In a moment of anger, I fought with him. Jean Wuyun was filled with anger at the mention of this matter. Do they really think that having a disciple with the free and natural physique can decide everything? A cold glint shot out from Jean Luanhui's eyes. Wuyun, the free and natural physique, is indeed a legend from 10,000 years ago. We cannot gamble. Once he truly matures, then no one will be able to control him. Since he cannot be used by us, then we shall destroy him. The future of the Misty Mansion must be completely grasped in the hands of our Jean family. Only then can we make use of the mysteries of the main peak of the Misty Mansion and open up that legendary path to the heavens. Jean Luanhui looked at the void in front of him and said slowly, "What the old ancestor, the Nine-Nether First Young Master, could do, does it mean that our descendants cannot do it? With the same cultivation technique, is it really impossible for us to reach that legendary peak of Tao? Are we really going to destroy this free and natural physique?" Jean Wuyun was taken aback. He had never thought of this before. After all, the speed at which the free and natural physique improved was definitely not a bad thing for the Jean family or the entire Misty Mansion. Right now, the Jean family had replaced the Miao family as the master of the Misty Mansion. The free and natural physique belonged to the Misty Mansion. That was no different from belonging to the Jean family. It should be better to improve as quickly as possible. Why must we destroy it? Isn't that too much of a pity? What a great waste of God's gift. Chapter 984. Second update. Continuing to work hard. Jean Luanhui looked at Jean Wuyun coldly. Right now, you only see that when that free and natural physique prodigy grows up, he may become the guardian of the Misty Mansion, and naturally the future guardian of the Jean family. But have you ever thought that after yesterday's matter, that person with the free and natural physique might have already sensed the enmity of our Jean family? If it were you, would you be willing to accept the fact that you are clearly stronger than everyone else, but still have to obey the commands of an enemy who is weaker than you? Cold sweat poured down Jean Wuyun's forehead. Are you still reluctant to do so now? You must know, if that person with the free and natural physique really grows into an invincible existence like the legends say, then it is very likely that our entire Zhan family will be completely destroyed. Zhan Luanhui scoffed. Although this is only a guess, and even a possibility, we still cannot take the risk. The Zhan family's 10,000 years of family business cannot be placed on luck. We must completely destroy all these possibilities. Zhan Luanhui paused for a moment and continued. Especially when you said that he broke through on the spot today, it made me even more certain that this person's free and natural physique is the real deal. There is no longer any doubt about this. Because of this, we must get rid of him. And we must do it as soon as possible. Jun Moxie had never imagined that his show in the afternoon would become the reason for Zhan Luanhui to destroy him. The reason why he chose to break through on the spot was naturally not purely to show off. His first goal was to obtain a spot to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. So, Jun Moxie had to continue to increase his bargaining chips. Showing off his peerless talent was to pave the way for him to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. As for the second reason, it was to tell Miao Jingyun and the other masters of the 8 great families, don't have any delusions about me. I'm someone that the Manor Lord of the Misty Mansion has personally chosen, so don't play your little tricks. Give me a relatively free space, and don't disturb me in anything. These 2 points could be seen from the expressions of the big shots when they left. Obviously, they had achieved the perfect result. I may be a genius, and possess unparalleled talent and cultivation speed. But, I'm still a gold Xian. The road ahead of me seems to be very long, so, you guys can discuss how to please me. This could be said to be a very important point, which was very beneficial to him in the Misty Mansion. In fact, it was to pave the way for a smooth departure. It could be said that Jun Nimosie's goal had been achieved, and it had been achieved perfectly. However, the world was like a game of chess, unpredictable and unpredictable. Jun Dashao would never have imagined that in the eyes of an ambitious family like the Zhan family, his display of talent, his greatest selling point, would instead become the path to death. But as for who would die, that was something that no one knew. After all, the free and natural physique Mo Jun Yi was only a disguise. Jun Dashao's current strength was rather terrifying. Xiao Xiao, ever since the last time, you have not appeared in front of anyone. I believe that the current Misty Mansion already has a very unfamiliar impression of you. So, I plan to leave the mission of killing the free and natural physique to you. A hint of ruthlessness appeared on Zhan Luanhui's youthful face. If Chao Guofeng and the rest obstruct us, we might as well get rid of them as well. Zhan Luanhui said. All right, I will do my best. Zhan Xiaozhao's smiling face revealed a hint of seriousness. To actually need a Saint Venerable to kill a gold Xian. If anyone knew about this, they would probably laugh their heads off. But Zhan Xiaoxiao himself knew that this mission was not light, definitely not light, because that was ultimately a free and natural physique. The future of a free and natural physique was not something that even a Saint Venerable could measure. Due to the importance that the Misty Mansion placed on the free and natural physique, other than the 7 holy emperors, there would definitely be other experts protecting him. Even if he could not complete the mission or even return, it was not impossible. So Zhan Xiaoxiao did not dare to be careless. He could not be careless. Since we've decided to get rid of him, then we must do it immediately. Being decisive is the only way to make a decisive move. That kind of opponent is hard to come by. Grooming an opponent to be one's future opponent is completely foolish and digging one's own grave. The corners of Zhan Luanhui's mouth twitched as if he had thought of something. Lenglang snorted. Then he raised his head and thought for a long time before saying slowly, Tianji, have there been any unusual movements in the Earth meridians during this period of time? Zhan Tianji's expression was solemn as he immediately replied, there are no abnormalities. The Miao family's Earth meridians are still slowly flowing in this direction. Everything is normal. I believe that after a period of time, it will completely merge into the meridians of the family. At that time, even if another feng shui master detects it, he will not be able to do anything. But I still feel that something is amiss. Zhan Luanhui narrowed his eyes. Perhaps it's because things are going too smoothly that I'm feeling uneasy. Right now, I'm very suspicious, If my master is still alive, that period of time if he is still alive. At this point, Jean Luanhui suddenly became irritated. He waved his hands and said, "All of you, get out. Go do what you should be doing." He actually ordered them to leave. Then he turned around and faced the dark wall alone, leaving only his back view for everyone to see. Although he did not speak anymore, but the first half of his sentence caused all 5 of their hearts to jolt. Jean Luanhui's master. Miao Qing Cheng. That person, is he still alive? Why would there be such a question? Could it be Miao Qing Cheng, the first ancestor of the Miao family, and the first owner of the Misty Mansion? The last disciple of the Nine Nether First Young Master. The Nine Nether First Young Master founded the Misty Mansion, but Miao Qing Cheng single-handedly brought the Misty Mansion to greater heights. It could be said that the entire Misty Mansion was filled with Miao Qing Cheng's traces. After Miao Qing Cheng established the Misty Mansion, he took in a total of 8 disciples. And they were the ancestors of the 8 great families. Jean Luanhui was actually one of the 8 personal disciples of Miao Qing Cheng, and the ancestor of the entire Zhan family. No wonder the Zhan family was so respectful to him, and Miao Qing Cheng was now a true legend in the Misty Mansion, second only to the Nine Nether First Young Master. Could it be that he was still alive? The few of them exchanged a look, feeling that this thought of theirs was ridiculous and senseless to the extreme. Nodding in agreement, the 5 of them prepared to leave. Suddenly, Jean Luanhui suddenly stood up. 2 beams of green light shot out from his pale face as he said in a low voice, "Someone has broken into the underground of the Zhan family. Go investigate immediately." Someone has broken in? How is this possible? Zhan Wu Yun was stunned. This was something that no one dared to believe. Ever since the Zhan family had the ambition of becoming the master of the Misty Mansion, the underground of the Zhan family had been a secret place of activity. Apart from the pure-blooded direct descendants of the Zhan family, no one else was allowed to enter. This level of secrecy could be said to have been done to the extreme. The other aristocratic families did not even know that the Zhan family had an underground world. Even in the Zhan family, a large family of 10,000 people, there were not more than 20 people who knew about the underground world. How could there be an outsider breaking into such a secret place? This is the power of the soul. The smell of a living person. My senses are not wrong. There is indeed an outsider that has broken in. Jean Luanhui said darkly. His pale face was cold and ruthless. What are you waiting for? Go. Investigate thoroughly. Jun Moxie relied on the extremely heaven-defying concealment ability of the Yin-Yang escape to charge down from the skies, barging into the inner residence of the Zhan family. As though there was no one around, he grabbed a few people and used the soul-absorbing technique and hypnosis to interrogate them about the whereabouts of Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu. Although the population of the Zhan family was not small, the number of people who could attend the meetings of the upper echelons was even more limited. There were even fewer who knew about the whereabouts of the Zhan family brothers. After interrogating over 10 people, Jun Moxie finally found out from one of the upper echelons that these 2 unlucky brothers had already been arranged to go to a certain Nine Nether soul refinement. And as for that place, even fewer people knew the exact location. The only clue was that it was somewhere underground. Jun Dashao was skilled and daring. And with the miraculous Yin-Yang escape and the fact that he had come with great fanfare, he couldn't possibly return empty-handed. So he continued to infiltrate deeper into the Zhan family's most secretive underground world. The Zhan family's underground world was a top-secret place to anyone in this world. Even if the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters were here personally, they might not be able to enter and exit as they pleased. But to young Master Jun, who had the perverted power of Earth and the Yin-Yang escape, it was as though he was strolling in his own backyard. The Zhan family was extremely strict. All the servants who were in charge of the household in the underground world were not allowed to take a single step out. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. Most of these people had been born and raised underground since young, and had never come into contact with sunlight. So all of them were like zombies, their faces pale and devoid of any color. June Moxie almost thought that he had arrived at the white world on Earth. He was extremely shocked. Fuck, these fellows' faces were even whiter than his teeth. Even those real white foreigners in his previous life were not this white. They were so white that it was almost horrifying. This time, it was easier. He only caught 2 of them and used the soul-searching technique to find out the location of the 9 nether soul refinement. The locals were still more familiar with the environment. And this time, Da Xiao did not use the soul-searching technique or the hypnosis technique, because there was no need to hide anything now. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.